Chapter 1199. Taihao three people did not have much friendship with Kong Lingxiong. The moment they made their move, it was a killing move. But after more than a dozen converged, Jiang Chun was shocked too. All because Kong Lingxiong was really too powerful. He fought Taihao, Jiang Dantian, and Han Moyuan three people alone and actually did not fall into a disadvantageous position. In fact, as time passed, he actually gradually gained the upper hand. Only at this moment did Jiang Chun understand why fear appeared in these people's eyes when Kong Lingxiong was mentioned previously. It was all because the strength of this inner court number one was really not bragging. Those in the inner court who can contend with Kong Lingxiong are only Long Xuanji and Shi Wuchen. The Dragon Race and the Peacock Royal Clan have a pretty good relationship. It's impossible for Long Xuanji to make a move against Kong Lingxiong. As for Shi Wuchen, that casual personality is even more impossible to fight head-on with Kong Lingxiong. All around, there were many people watching the show, and they were even commenting. At the same time, there were also many people who slowly leaned over toward Jiang Chun. Shi Wuchen did not want to make a move. Taihao three people were currently fighting fiercely with Kong Lingxiong. Jiang Chun was alone right now, and to them, this was the best opportunity to kill Jiang Chun. I say, if you guys really kill me, these few evil races won't let it go, Jiang Chun said mockingly. Although this is Heavenspan Court, you have to know that there will come a day when you all will leave Heavenspan Court. Brat, we have so many people attacking together. When the time comes, we'll shoulder this responsibility together. I don't believe that several evil races can still make a move against the forces that we're in at the same time. Although the evil races are strong, the forces that we're in are not weak either. One angry roar after another came over. At the same time, someone attacked. A divine light was like a sharp blade, pressing straight for the space between Jiang Chun's eyebrows. At this moment, Jiang Chun did not dare to be careless. His figure was like a ghost, rushing into the distance. As the saying went, run if you can't beat. Only by keeping your life would you have the chance to take revenge. Of course, this was what everyone thought. As for Jiang Chun, since he caused such a big commotion, would he really run? Today, you must die without a doubt. No one can save you. For a time, many people stood up and chased after Jiang Chun. However, although Jiang Chun's cultivation wasn't high, his battle prowess was extremely strong, especially his speed. He possessed a top-notch movement technique like the earth shrinking technique, so how could these people easily catch up to him? After half the time it took for an incense stick to burn, Jiang Chun returned to the dojo after running around with a teasing look on his face. Behind him, the group of people had ugly expressions on their faces as they cursed furiously. They felt humiliated. There were so many inter-campus geniuses who were qualified to enter the dojo, and their cultivation bases were even higher than Jiang Chun's. And yet, none of them had been able to catch up to Jiang Chun. What? Running back again? Knowing that you can't escape? You came back to wait for death? Kid, are you tired? If you're tired, then rest. Once you close your eyes, everything will be over. At this moment, the crowd finally caught up to Jiang Chun and surrounded him. However, Jiang Chun was very calm. Pointing at the surroundings with one finger, he said, "Do you know why I came back after taking a detour?" "What do you mean?" "Oh no." These people weren't idiots. They immediately realized that something was amiss. At the same time, someone noticed something was amiss and exclaimed, "You set up an array while you were running away." Inter-campus disciples are indeed talented geniuses. You noticed it so quickly. Unfortunately, it's too late, Jiang Chun whispered. With a flick of his finger, inscriptions began to appear in the air. Before these people could leave the range of the array, a gigantic and complicated array was formed. Like a cage, it imprisoned all the people who were chasing after him. You want to imprison us with a mere array? Your cultivation base is too low. How powerful can the array you set up be? A few people spoke and tried to force their way out of the array. However, they had underestimated Jiang Chun's attainments in tactical formations. A series of explosions were heard. Inside the array, divine light rose and laws appeared. However, This array was like a rock. No matter how much divine light and laws fell, there was not a single crack on the array. At the same time, Jiang Chun waved his hand, and the life-greedy spirit appeared in his hand. Life-greedy spirit? This spirit is too cruel. It shouldn't exist in this world. At this, Jiang Chun snickered. His eyes were full of killer's intent. Life-greedy spirits shouldn't exist in this world? I think it's you who shouldn't exist in this world. Those who kill will always be killed. This is a principle that hasn't changed since the beginning of time. You should understand it, right? As soon as he finished speaking, the people trapped in the array did not even have time to react before they saw the saber light on Greedy Ghost's head explode. Then, a saber light flooded the entire array like a river, accompanied by a series of explosions and the smell of blood in the air. When the blade dissipated, the group of people trapped in the array had already disappeared. Not even a trace of residue was left. You really dare to kill them? These are all geniuses who are qualified to enter the dojo. You killed more than a dozen of them at once. Are you really not afraid? Around them, many people spoke one after another, their faces full of shock. When Jiang Chun heard this, his eyes narrowed slightly. He looked at the few people who spoke and asked, killing one is killing two is killing. What's the problem with killing a few more? Kid, there's a big problem. Do you know which forces those people you just killed are from? Each of them has a strong background. If these forces pursue the matter, even the evil race can't protect you. It's fine if you kill one or two. Now that you've killed so many at once, it's equivalent to offending several forces at the same time. Is that the least you can bear? Before Jiang Chun could speak, Tai Hao landed from the sky with a trace of injury on his body, but his eyes were full of fighting spirit. He glanced at the crowd, frowned, and said coldly, if one evil race can't protect him, then two. If two are not enough, then three. If he dies, I dare say that all the evil races will be furious. Humph, you really don't know his status in the evil race. Not to mention other things, my Jiang clan and the Great Void race will protect him to the end. Zhang Dantian also landed from the sky, his face full of determination. After a few breaths, Han Weiyuan also returned, and Kong Lingxiong also landed not far away. Obviously, the three of them had not gained any advantage until now and were unwilling to continue fighting. After all, with their status and cultivation, sometimes there was no need to fight to the death. Kong Lingxiong, what do you think of this? These evil races value him so much. The relationship between the Peacock Royal Tribe and the evil races is not good. Can you let them do as they wish? Someone looked at Kong Lingxiong, wanting to borrow his hand to kill Jiang Chun. Are you going to use me as a tool? Who do you think you are? Kong Lingxiong's face was gloomy, but he was cursing in his heart. Chapter 1200. The Peacock Royal Tribe and the Evil Tribe did have a blood feud, but that did not mean that Kong Lingxiong would become someone else's fighter. Just like now, Kong Lingxiong wanted to take action, but after the previous battle, he understood one thing. In terms of one-on-one combat, he was stronger than Jiang Dantian, Han Weiyuan, and Tai Hao. However, now that the three of them had joined forces, he could not gain any advantage. If they were to fight again, both sides would be seriously injured. At that time, if someone wanted to attack him, Kong Lingxiong would not be able to stop them. Therefore, he thought about it and felt that there was no need to fight to the death with Tai Hao and the other two for Jiang Chun. There are not many evil tribes, but there are many top forces in the Great Thousand World. Today, he killed so many people. If those forces join forces to pursue this matter, I'm afraid that even Tantian Court will not be able to protect him. Kong Lingxiong sneered. I don't need to do anything. There are many people who will come to kill him. Humph, Kong Lingxiong, I'm afraid you don't know the background of the evil tribes. Jiang Dantian and the other two looked gloomy, but there was a trace of arrogance in their eyes. Although there were not many evil tribes, each of them was very strong. It could even be said that there were not many extraordinaires in the Great Thousand World, and half of them were from the evil tribes. It was because of this that the evil tribes dared to be so arrogant in the Great Thousand World. Kong Lingxiong did not say much. He did not even want to discuss this matter anymore. He looked at Long Xuanji and asked, "When are we going to meet the ancestral dragon?" As soon as he said this, Long Xuanji's face turned black. This was because he had just received news that the ancestral dragon of the dragon tribe had personally ordered the entire dragon tribe to protect a human, and that human was Jiang Chun. Previously, Long Xuanji had found Jiang Chun because he recognized Jiang Chun's identity. He was waiting for Jiang Chun outside the training hall, not because he wanted to attack Jiang Chun, but because he wanted to ask about the relationship between Jiang Chun and the ancestral dragon. If their relationship was good, he could befriend the ancestral dragon through Jiang Chun. He could also obtain great benefits for the dragon tribe, but what Long Xuanji didn't expect was that Jiang Chun had caused such a huge commotion here. Now, some things were more troublesome. Now, I'm afraid you won't be able to see Lord Ancestral Dragon. Long Xuanji's expression was ugly. He pulled Kong Lingxiong to the side and said softly, "Lord Ancestral Dragon ordered us to protect a human." "Oh." Kong Lingxiong frowned and asked, "What does this have to do with me meeting Lord Ancestral Dragon?" "Of course." Long Xuanji's face darkened. He pointed at Jiang Chun and said, "The person that Lord Ancestral Dragon wants to protect is him, and you just wanted to kill him. Do you think you can still see the Ancestral Dragon now? If Lord Ancestral Dragon finds out about this, the entire Peacock Royal Tribe won't be able to protect you." Kong Lingxiong was stunned when he heard that. He was in a daze and didn't know what to say or do. After a few breaths, he recovered and asked with a strange expression, "Since you knew about it, why didn't you tell me just now? Did I have time to tell you? You attacked the moment you came up." Long Xuanji pursed his lips and sighed. "Now you should think about how to please him. I'm a direct descendant of the Peacock Royal Tribe and the top person in the Empyrean Garden's inner court. I'll inherit the position of Saint of Empyrean Garden. With my status and strength, you want me to please a middle-ranked chief god?" Kong Lingxiong said in a low voice. He was proud and wouldn't lower his head. However, Long Xuanji told him clearly that if he couldn't resolve the previous grudges and please Jiang Chun, even he, the Eastern Star Domain's Dragon Saint, would have difficulty meeting the Ancestral Dragon. "Why does the Peacock Royal Tribe want to meet Lord Ancestral Dragon this time?" Long Xuanji said in a low voice. "You should know how important this matter is. Now that you've offended Jiang Chun, if you can't meet Lord Ancestral Dragon, it'll be your own problem, and you'll ruin the entire Peacock Royal Tribe's plan." Kong Lingxiong's face turned pale instantly. He knew very well why the Peacock Royal Tribe wanted to meet Lord Ancestral Dragon this time. This matter concerned the survival of the Peacock Royal Tribe. Now, if his actions caused the Peacock Royal Tribe to be unable to meet Lord Ancestral Dragon, then hurry up and think of a way. If not, I'll kneel down and admit my mistake." Kong Lingxiong said telepathically. Of course, he couldn't let others hear this. Otherwise, his reputation as the top person in the inner court would be tarnished. Even the Peacock Royal Tribe's reputation would be tarnished. "What can I think of? I've been waiting here for him to come out and wanted to get closer to him. Now that you've messed things up, I'll probably be included as well." Long Xuanji said angrily. Long Xuanji and Kong Lingxiong looked at each other and smiled bitterly. At that moment, Jiang Chun was being protected by Tai Hao and the other two. All of them looked nervous and didn't dare to be careless. This was because the people around them still wanted to kill Jiang Chun. Sigh. I wanted to keep a low profile. I didn't expect that my strength wouldn't allow me to do so. Jiang Chun sighed and ran his fingers through his hair. He said narcissistically, "If the heavens didn't give birth to me, how could I be called a demon? Cough, cough. I say, look at the reality. The current situation isn't good for us." Jiang Dongtian couldn't take it anymore. He pointed at the people around them and said, "Look at them. When they look at you, they're all filled with murderous intent. They can't wait to skin you alive. Aren't you guys here?" Jiang Chun said with a smile. He looked relaxed. Then, he looked at Shi Wuchen and said, "Kong Lingxiong won't make a move. You can raise your territory again." "I'm sorry." My territory was broken just now. I won't be able to raise it again in a short period of time, Sherwuchen said. In this way, Jiang Chun, who had looked relaxed, was thrown into chaos. What kind of joke was this? He thought that with Sherwuchen around, he could avoid this calamity as soon as he opened his territory. Who would have thought? A real man knows when to yield and when to stand tall, right? Jiang Chen's expression turned serious. He didn't wait for Tai Hao and the others to react. His figure flashed, and he rushed into the distance. This time, Jiang Chen directly said, "If you're not afraid that I'll set up another formation, you can come and kill me." As soon as these words came out, the people who were about to chase him down immediately stopped. After all, Jiang Chen's formation killed many people after it was set up. This guy's cultivation isn't high. Why is the power of the formation he set up so great? His attainments and formations are extraordinary. You have to be careful when fighting with this person. In the end, Jiang Chen left just like that. No one dared to chase after him. The situation that they thought was certain to die was resolved so easily. However, everyone knew that as long as Jiang Chen was still in Tongtian Garden, there would be plenty of opportunities to kill him. And Jiang Chen was also very clear about this. Therefore, he had to do something now. Chapter 1201. When he first entered the inner yard, he wanted to keep a low profile. He didn't expect to cause so much trouble the first time he entered the dojo. Of course, Jiang Chen didn't expect that the precepts he comprehended in his previous life would appear continuously in the dojo. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have entered the dojo so early. Now, most of the inner yard disciples wanted to kill him. Jiang Dongtian and the others couldn't protect him. Jiang Chen had to think of another way. Otherwise, he wouldn't be safe in the inner yard. This must be the Hall of Elders. After a few breaths, Jiang Chen arrived before a palace in the inner yard. The palace was magnificent. It was made of golden bricks and carved with ancient wood. There was a sense of simplicity and vicissitudes in its splendor. This was where the inner yard elders rested. After Jiang Chen arrived, he bowed slightly and said softly, "Disciple Jiang Chen is here to greet the elders of the inner yard." "What's the matter?" An elder's voice came from the palace. There was a sense of annoyance and disdain in his voice. After all, Jiang Chen's cultivation was too low. He was unique in the entire inner yard. If they didn't know Jiang Chen's fighting prowess, which of the Inner Institute's elders would treat a disciple of the Inner Institute with a high cultivation level with respect? "Elders, I've just entered the inner yard. There are some things I don't understand. I would like to ask for your guidance," Jiang Chen said. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and a treasure the size of a small mountain was sent into the palace. For a moment, the palace was silent. There was no sound. After a few breaths, someone in the palace spoke again. His voice was strange. "After so many years, you are the first person who dares to come here and openly bribe us. How can this be considered a bribe? I have something to ask you. Since I'm asking for your advice, and you're willing to teach me, these treasures are a token of my appreciation. How can this be considered a bribe?" Jiang Chen said seriously, "You are shameless. You are a genius to be able to make a bribe sound so righteous." Inside the palace, several elders didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They had been elders in the inner courtyard for so many years, but this was the first time they had met someone like Jiang Chen. He even dared to come to the elders' hall and openly bribe them. "Come in and talk." After a few breaths of time, someone spoke up, allowing Jiang Chen to enter the palace. However, Jiang Chen did not enter. He continued to stand respectfully at the door with a smile on his face. "Actually, it's nothing much. It's just that I've run into some trouble recently that might endanger my life. That's why I'd like the elders to help me." "Oh." "The inner yard doesn't prohibit fights to the death. If someone wants to kill you, we can't interfere." "Yes, your request is very difficult to fulfill." Several elders spoke up one after another. They were indeed in a difficult position. Jiang Chen chuckled. The heavenly materials and rare treasures that were sent in just now were not returned, which meant that this matter was feasible. Then it was definitely not delivered to the right place. In the next moment, Jiang Chen waved his hand, and numerous heavenly materials and rare treasures the size of small hills were sent into the palace. Within 10 breaths of time, Jiangchen had sent out 10 heavenly materials and rare treasures, all of which were of superior quality. There were at least tens of thousands of them. One superior heavenly material and rare treasure was equivalent to one source crystal. This time, Jiangchen had sent out tens of thousands of source crystals. What kind of concept was this? After all, even a holy son of a transcendent force would not be able to take out so many origin crystals. Disciple outside, what's your name? Young man, you're bribing us like this. If we don't agree. At this moment, all the elders in the palace were gathered together. As they spoke, they divided up the heavenly materials and rare treasures. To them, other than the dean, they had the most power in Tong Tian court. Now, as long as the dean didn't say anything, they could accept Jiangchen's gifts. Moreover, with so many inner courtyard elders present, they could easily find a reason to save Jiangchen's life. Even if the inner courtyard had a rule that the elders could not interfere with the affairs of the disciples, these rules were set by the elders in the first place. At most, they could change the rules. Disciple Jiangchen, I hope the elders will take care of me in the future, Jiangchen said with a smile. It's no big deal. Jiangchen, take these tokens. Each token represents the presence of the elders. With these tokens in hand, all the elders of the inner courtyard are standing behind you. As long as you don't cause a big commotion, you can do whatever you want in the inner courtyard. In an instant, 11 tokens flew out of the palace and landed in front of Jiangchen. Jiangchen looked at them one by one. These tokens were all engraved with the elders' names. Holding these tokens is equivalent to the elders coming in person? Jiangchen asked. Of course. From now on, you can do whatever you want. After receiving confirmation, Jiangchen stood outside the palace and bowed slightly to the group of elders in the palace again. Then he left. He walked very confidently, especially his steps. It was as if he didn't recognize anyone. This kid is quite interesting. He's human. How can he refuse money? Besides, if we want to improve our cultivation, we need a large amount of source crystal. Since this kid gave away so much without batting an eye, it means he has more on him. As long as he's alive, we won't have to worry about not having enough money to spend. The group of elders in the palace was very happy. At that moment, after leaving the elders' hall, Jiangchen planned to find a place to cultivate. After all, the training hall was still closed and could not be entered. Even if he could enter, with Jiangchen's current cultivation, it would be useless even if he comprehended too many laws. However, not long after he left, he was intercepted by a youth. The young man's aura was very strong, and his cultivation was at the high-level ultimate god level. Jiangchen, you're now a famous person in the inner yard. The young man's eyes narrowed, and murderous intent rose in his eyes. Jiangchen heard him and smiled mockingly. He asked, "What's the matter?" "I want to borrow something from you." As the young man spoke, he slowly walked toward Jiangchen. "Oh, what do you want to borrow?" Jiangchen narrowed his eyes. Of course, he knew what the young man wanted to borrow. He wanted to borrow his life. However, Jiangchen was not afraid. Without waiting for the young man to reach him, Jiangchen waved his hand, and hundreds of treasures fell in front of the young man. "Do you want to borrow money? Are these enough?" "You don't have to return them," Jiangchen said with a smile. At that moment, the young man was a little flustered. He was there to kill Jiangchen, not to ask for money. However, when he saw so many treasures, he was also tempted. Moreover, he had no enmity with Jiangchen. He was just jealous of Jiangchen. "I have no enmity with him, so I don't have to kill him. Moreover, there are many people in the inner yard who want his life." The young man thought, and then put away the treasures. The murderous intent in his eyes disappeared. He laughed awkwardly and said, "Fellow Jiangchen, you know me well. I won't be polite with these treasures. When I have the money, I'll definitely return them to you." Chapter 1202. You have the money to pay me back? Jiangchen chuckled. He was filled with disdain for the young man. "Since I've given you the heavenly treasure, How can you return it to me unless I take it back by force? However, Jiangchen did a good job on the surface. He patted the young man's shoulder with a smile and said, "You don't have to return it. We'll be disciples of the same sect from now on. Don't treat me as an outsider." "Thank you, Taoist Jiangchen." The young man also put on a fake smile. After all, he did not want to return the heavenly treasure from the bottom of his heart. Then, the two of them chatted politely for a while and left respectively. Half an hour later, on a mountain peak in the inner courtyard, after Jiangchen arrived, he set up a formation and boundary and planned to cultivate in seclusion there for a while. For the current Jiangchen, the path below the Divine King realm was just walking from the beginning. Now, as long as he had enough divine power in his body, he could break through. Moreover, Jiangchen had mastered so many great path rules. As long as he had enough divine power, he could step into the Divine King realm without any hindrance. In my previous life, I reached the Divine King realm and thought that I was invincible. Jiangchen smiled bitterly and thought that he was too naive in his previous life. After his rebirth, Jiangchen thought that he would be invincible again after returning to the Divine King realm. Now, he realized that the Divine King realm was nothing. In the Great Thousand World, Divine Kings were everywhere and ultimate gods were everywhere. Only by becoming an emperor god, or even an emperor, could one have a foothold in the Great Thousand World. Cultivate in seclusion. Breakthrough in one go. In the end, Jiangchen sat quietly and began to cultivate in seclusion. Time passed slowly. 10 days later, the training ground opened again. All the geniuses entered the training ground to comprehend the Great Path rules. However, after they entered the training ground, Jiangchen's figure kept flashing in their minds. It was only because what Jiangchen had done in the Taoist sanctum was too shocking. Where did that kid go? Is he still in the inner courtyard? Or did he run away? Humph! Even if he's still in the inner yard, he won't have a good time in the future. We've already sent word back to our faction. The experts of our faction are probably already waiting outside heavenly gardens for him to come out. In their hearts, Jiangchen was already a dead man. Since ancient times, there has been a rule in Heavenspan Garden that the grudges within the garden cannot be spread outside. Aren't you afraid of angering the higher-ups of Heavenly Palace? Or do you think that we, the evil races, will sit idly by? Jiang Dongtian, Tai Hao, Hunma Yuan, and the others had ugly expressions on their faces. They also reported this matter, and now the major evil races have probably sent people over. But he didn't know if Jiangchen could hold on until that moment. What? Are you saying that Jiangchen has caused a lot of trouble in the inner court? Damn it, who dares to touch him? On the other side, Prince and Jiang Zixio also heard about this. They were greatly enraged and also hurriedly informed their respective clans about this matter. However, the answer they received was very simple. Make them swear to protect Jiangchen to the death. This guy really causes a ruckus wherever he goes, Jiang Zixio said with a bitter smile. However, he wants to keep a low profile, but his strength also doesn't allow it. Saying that he's a prodigious talent feels like insulting him. Prince's expression was incomparably strange. Recalling back then, when he first got acquainted with Jiangchen, although Prince obeyed Jiangchen, he disliked Jiangchen from the bottom of his heart. But only after coming into contact for a period of time did he discover that Jiangchen's strength could be said to be rarely seen since ancient times. Once this kind of person grew up, not to talk about dominating a region, he would at least be an overlord of a region too. I hope that he can hold on. The following days passed very peacefully. Ever since Jiangchen went into close seclusion, no one came to find him either. Furthermore, along with the passage of time, many people seemed to have forgotten about Jiangchen. There were even some people who thought that Jiangchen had already been killed. However, it was not until more than 10 days later, when the tribulation clouds densely covered the mountain peak where Jiangchen was located, that everyone realized that monster had been in the inner yard all along, and he had broken through again. This heavenly tribulation, its power is vast and mighty. I'm afraid it's comparable to a godly, venerable level heavenly tribulation. Godly venerable? Look carefully. That's a sharp blade condensed from the divine light of the great Tao. It's a heavenly blade. This is a godly emperor level heavenly tribulation. Many people raise their heads to look, and their expressions change drastically. And right at this moment, everyone saw a wisp of green mist erupt from the mountain peak, directly shaking the heavenly tribulation into nothingness. Then, the tribulation clouds dissipated, and profound light descended from the sky. Wisps of divine light rotated along with the laws of the great Tao. Finally, a divine core condensed, flickering with heavenly light as if to illuminate the entire eastern star region. The divine core was very resplendent, as if many stars had been smelted. There were even wisps of obscure aura that turned into dense mist floating on top of it. The divine core floated in the air, and the surrounding great Tao trembled as if unable to withstand the power emitted by this divine core. This is the supreme Tao fruit? This guy, the supreme Tao fruit, has become a godly king. A supreme godly king? At this moment, not to mention the inner yard, the entire heavenly garden was alarmed, especially after seeing the supreme divine king's divine spark. Even the expressions of the inner court's elders changed greatly. It's him? That brat who openly bribed us actually has a supreme Tao fruit? And now he's even become a supreme godly king? Many inner yard elders were shocked. A supreme godly king of this level could be said to be rare throughout history. Calculating the time, in the entire greater thousand world, a supreme godly king had not appeared in 100 years. I was wondering why this brat would come to bribe us. Turns out he's afraid of dying prematurely. Heh, my heavenly garden has picked up a treasure. At this moment, the supreme godly king divine core slowly descended and finally entered Jiang Chen's body, branded into his divine soul, and finally merged with his soul. At this moment, Jiang Chen could not help laughing wildly. After rebirth, he finally returned to the godly king realm again. Furthermore, this lifetime supreme godly king realm was far ahead of the previous lifetime. In this lifetime, the power of the supreme Tao fruit had become a supreme godly king realm. He was invincible in the godly king realm. Otherwise, how could he be called a supreme godly king? Supreme godly king realm. Jiang Chun stood on the mountain peak and looked at the large pile of spirit bodies beneath his feet. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he said softly, "Supreme godly king realm? Huh. Even a godly emperor is nothing." Swoosh. His voice had just landed when suddenly a cold light shot over from afar. This was a sharp arrow covered in runes and patterns. There were even great Tao laws roaring like a true dragon. Someone made a move, wanting to kill Jiang Chun under the situation where his foundation was unstable when he had just broken through. Clang! However, Jiang Chun merely raised his hand and waved, shattering this sharp light with the strength of his physical body. However, Jiang Chun didn't have time to react. He saw dozens of disciples of the inner yard dashing onto the peak of the mountain and surrounding him. Chapter 1203. It was rare to see a supreme being achieve the position of a supreme being. At that moment, a group of inner yard disciples rushed toward Jiang Chun, intending to kill him while his foundation was still unstable after his breakthrough. Jiang Chun chuckled disdainfully and waved his hand. Many rays of mysterious light and worldly principles emanated from them. They were like 10,000 flying swords. Poof! A series of muffled sounds could be heard. Rays of light shot up into the sky as if they were going to cover this part of the world. Blood splattered everywhere it passed, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. It could be seen that the inner yard's disciples, who had dashed over, were all killed by Jiang Chun in just a single confrontation. None of them were left alive. Even a supreme god can't fight back against him. He's too powerful. a supreme divine king, realm expert. Even if a god emperor were to come, they would have to be wary of him. Exclamations could be heard, and even the elders of the inner yard were shocked. It was a one-sided massacre. Jiang Chun, you've killed so many inner yard disciples. If you dare to leave Tong Tian Garden, you'll definitely die. The forces they belong to will not let you go. Someone shouted angrily with murderous intent in his eyes. However, they were just talking. It was impossible for them to deal with Jiang Chun, and they did not dare to do so. Whoever comes, I'll kill him. Jiang Chun was very straightforward. He couldn't stop at this moment. Moreover, Jiang Chun had always understood a simple principle. Those who killed would always be killed. Don't think that you're invincible in the inner yard. Kong Lingxiong and Long Xuanji can still kill you. You're on good terms with the evil tribe, but Kong Lingxiong's Peacock King tribe has a deep grudge against the evil tribe. Do you think Kong Lingxiong will let you go? Jiang Chun smiled when he heard that. He admitted that Kong Lingxiong was really powerful. He was able to fight against Tai Hao, Jiang Dongtian, and Han Moyuan alone. However, so what? Today, if Kong Lingxiong dared to come, Jiang Chun would not mind fighting him to the death. I don't have any grudge against Jiang Chun. Don't spout nonsense. At that moment, Kong Lingxiong appeared not far away with a dark expression. He felt bitter in his heart. These inner yard disciples were really troublemakers. Kong Lingxiong was eager to please Jiang Chun so that he could meet the ancestral dragon of the dragon tribe. Now, it was impossible for him to fight against Jiang Chun. Kong Lingxiong, as the most powerful in the inner yard, are you afraid? Someone asked. Hearing this, Kong Lingxiong's face instantly darkened. He had to admit that Jiang Chun was strong because he had already achieved the Supreme Divine King realm. However, for him, the number one disciple of the inner courtyard, if he really had a life-or-death fight with Jiang Chun, it was hard to say who would end up dead. Kong Lingxiong, if you want to fight, I'm willing to keep you company. Jiang Chun raised his brows. It's time to settle the score. Kong Lingxiong's face darkened when he heard Su Kei's words. Even if he was more powerful than Jiang Chun, he would not dare to fight against Jiang Chun. Moreover, Kong Lingxiong believed that if he fought against Jiang Chun, he would have a 50% chance of winning. He was not confident that he could defeat Jiang Chun. It's all a misunderstanding. I'm only targeting the evil tribe, not you. Kong Lingxiong hurriedly explained. However, when he saw Jiang Chun's fighting spirit, he knew that there was no point in explaining further. It seems like I have to find a chance to talk to him alone, Kong Lingxiong thought to himself. Then he left without saying a word. Is Kong Lingxiong really afraid of Jiang Chun? Impossible. Both of them have not fought before. How could Kong Lingxiong be afraid of Jiang Chun? Many people were discussing among themselves. Each of them had a strange expression on their faces. They knew that Kong Lingxiong might not be afraid of Jiang Chun, but he was definitely afraid of him. After all, the combat strength of a supreme divine king was not something that ordinary people could imagine. Jiang Chun, you are not invincible in the inner yard. If the Aeon Tower opens and the people inside come out, you won't even be able to stay in the inner yard. Looking at the time, the Aeon Tower is about to open. Many people were excited, especially when they thought of the group of Tong Tian Garden disciples in the Aeon Tower. Their eyes were filled with excitement. Jiang Chun was also stunned. He had never heard of such a place in Tong Tian Garden. The Aeon Tower is the most special place in Tong Tian Garden. Jiang Chun came to Jiang Dongtian's side and slowly explained. It turned out that the disciples with the highest status in Tong Tian Garden were not the inner yard disciples, but the group of people who could enter the Aeon Tower. Some of them had been in Tong Tian Garden for 100 years, while others had been in Tong Tian Garden for 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years. These people were all extremely talented. In the entire Eastern Star region, there were not many who could compare to them. They had reached the end of their cultivation in Tong Tian Garden. Due to their extraordinary talent, they had entered the Aeon Tower. Cultivating in the Aeon Tower was like going through reincarnation. After experiencing the condensed experience of countless years, it could be said that one day changed. Once, there was a disciple who came out of the Aeon Tower. As soon as he came out, he defeated all the disciples in Tong Tian Garden and defeated all the elders in Tong Tian Garden. In the end, he became the strongest elder in Tong Tian Garden. Now, he had become the dean of Tong Tian Garden. When it came to the dean of Tong Tian Garden, not only the Eastern Star region, but the entire Great Thousand World knew about him. After coming out of the Aeon Tower, one day changed. It took him only 5 days to become an emperor. Then, it took him another 3 days to become a transcendent. This cultivation speed could be said to be a miracle among miracles. Of course, all of this was because of the Aeon Tower. Does this mean that the Aeon Tower is about to open and the people who are cultivating inside are about to come out? Jiang Chen asked. That's right. Zhang Dongtian looked worried and said, the Aeon Tower opens once every 10 years. Every time, the disciples who come out of the Aeon Tower will undergo a shocking transformation. Previously, you killed so many disciples of the Inner Yard. Some of them are related to those people in the Aeon Tower. Zhang Dongtian said softly. If they know that you killed so many people, they won't let you go. Oh, is that so? Jiang Chen looked up at a tall mountain in the depths of the Inner Yard. There was indeed a tall tower there. It should be where the Aeon Tower was located. The Great Thousand World is really mysterious and unpredictable. Perhaps my path in the Great Thousand World has just begun, Jiang Chen said softly. Aren't you afraid? Zhang Dongtian frowned. You haven't seen how terrifying those people who come out of the Aeon Tower are. I advise you to. Before Zhang Dongtian could finish his words, Jiang Chen smiled and said, Come on, let's fight. Those who come to kill me, kill them. When Zhang Dongtian heard this, his expression changed slightly. He looked at Jiang Chen's face and suddenly felt that the young man in front of him seemed to have changed. As for what had changed, he could not tell. Chapter 1204. Everyone dispersed, leaving only Jiang Chen standing on the mountain peak. He wanted to be alone. Since entering the great wide world, Jiang Chen had done many things, but in the end, some things were forced. Now he needed to set a goal for himself. He needed to think about how to go next and where to go. Jiang Chen knew very well that the waters of the great wide world were very deep, deeper and more turbid than what he saw in front of him. There were hundreds of races in great numbers, and the major sects and forces dominated a region. The emperor was in charge of a generation, and the transcendents were overseeing the world. In such a big environment, if he took a wrong step, he might fall into eternal damnation. Jiang Chen thought for a long time and calculated his current foundation in the great wide world. In addition to the major evil races, there was a group of people from the Sky Reaching School and Nianchanga, who was fighting in the Southern Star region. Other than that, Jiang Chen could not think of anyone else. Not enough. It's far from enough. Jiang Chen sighed. The evil race was indeed very powerful in the great wide world, but if they were enemies with the entire great wide world, they should not do so. Now, the evil race was trying to please Jiang Chen, just for his blood essence. If one day, the evil race really became enemies with the great wide world, they would definitely abandon Jiang Chen. Without the support of the evil race, Jiang Chen's foundation would be greatly reduced. I must find a stronger and more reliable force, Jiang Chen thought to himself. However, although the great wide world was big, how many forces dared to openly attack the creatures of the ancestral realm? Not to mention becoming enemies with the entire great wide world. Jiang Chen thought for a long time and finally shook his head with a bitter smile. He knew that if he wanted to make some changes and find a new force, he could only meet up with Nianchanga. After all, Nianchanga was now very popular in the Southern Star region. He must be very familiar with it, and there must be someone helping him. Otherwise, it would be impossible for Nianchanga and his group of undead ghost generals to set off such a big storm in the Southern Star region. Boy, look at your worried face. Is there any trouble? All of a sudden, an old man in plain clothes appeared beside Jiang Chen. It came so quietly that even Jiang Chen did not notice it. However, Jiang Chen didn't care. He didn't even have to worry about anything. The reason for that was because those who were allowed to enter the Skyspan Garden were either disciples of the Skyspan Garden or upper echelons of the Skyspan Garden. The old man before him was clearly not a disciple, so he had to be one of the upper echelons of Skyspan Garden. The upper echelons of Heavenspan Court would never make a move against their disciples. "It's a little troublesome," Jiangchen whispered. After that, he smiled and asked, "Senior, what are you doing here? Are you here for me?" When the old man heard this, he didn't say anything. Instead, he stood side by side with Jiangchen and gazed into the distance. It wasn't until half an incense stick of time later that he pointed at a tower in the distance and slowly said, "That is the Aeon Tower. From 10,000 years ago to 10 years ago, the strongest disciples of Heavenspan Court all cultivated there." "I've heard about it," Jiangchen whispered and asked curiously, "Senior, is the Aeon Tower really that miraculous? I've heard that the current dean achieved his current achievements because of the Aeon Tower." Indeed, the current dean's achievements are deeply related to the Aeon Tower. The old man nodded. Looking at Jiangchen, he asked with a smile, "You have just broken through to the Divine King realm, and you even have a supreme venerable doctrine fruit which is rarely seen throughout history. So, what is bothering you? You should be happy now." Then, without waiting for Jiangchen to speak, the old man in plain clothes narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you worried that the people of the Aeon Tower will target you after they come out?" "Why should I be worried about them? If they dare to come, I'll dare to kill them." Jiangchen's eyes narrowed. He no longer needed to be afraid of those people of the same generation. The supreme Tao fruit of the Divine King realm was mighty. Even Jiangchen himself did not know what the limit of his current combat power was. However, Jiangchen was very sure of one thing. Currently, ordinary ultimate gods could not hurt him at all. He could also suppress an ultimate god with a flick of his finger. Jiangchen even dared to say that those genius-level ultimate gods would not be able to withstand more than 3 moves from him. As for an emperor god, Jiangchen had never fought with an emperor god, but he thought that they would not be too bad. As for an emperor god, Jiangchen did not think about it. After all, it was almost impossible for people of the same generation to enter the emperor realm at such a young age. This time, when the Aeon Tower opens, there should be many people coming out. At that time, there will definitely be people coming to cause trouble for you. The old man in plain clothes joked. "Who asked you to kill so many inner yard disciples?" Those disciples were all supported by powerful forces. "So what? They have forces behind them, and so do I," Jiangchen was very confident. Although the evil race would not become enemies with the great wide world for him, it should not be a problem for them to deal with a few forces for him. Besides, all of the evil races should have known about Jiangchen's essence blood by now. Presumably, those evil races would come back to please him in order to purify the ominous substances in their bodies. The evil race is indeed very strong in the great wide world, but you have to know that some forces are above the evil race. If you provoke those forces, I'm afraid the evil race won't dare to help you," the old man in plain clothes said. When Jiangchen heard this, he could not help but be stunned for a moment, and he was even more shocked. One had to know that in every evil race, there were transcendents overseeing it, and transcendents were the top combat power in the great wide world. Even if there were individual forces that were stronger than the evil race, they could not be said to be above the evil race. "Senior, what are you trying to say? Also, isn't the word above used wrongly? Even if there are forces that are stronger than the evil race, most of them are only slightly stronger. How can they be above?" Jiangchen asked doubtfully. When the old man in plain clothes heard this, he smiled and said, "The foundation of some forces is not what you can imagine, especially here." As he said this, the old man in plain clothes pointed to his feet and said, "Do you know why the other forces don't interfere in the matters of Heavenly Mansion? Do you really think that Heavenly Mansion set the rules?" Could it be? Jiangchen's expression froze, clearly understanding the meaning of this old man in plain clothes. What were rules? If one did not have enough strength, all rules were smoke, all nonsense. Then The reason why those forces did not dare to break the rules of Heavenly Mansion was that Heavenly Mansion was stronger than those forces. Moreover, it was definitely not just a little bit stronger. At this moment, Jiang Chun seemed to understand something and asked, Senior, those extremely strong forces that you mentioned, the forces above the evil race, are Heavenly Mansion among them? Of course. The old man in plain clothes nodded with a smile and said, Since the establishment of Heavenly Mansion until now, no one has dared to break the rules of Heavenly Mansion, and no one has dared to come to Heavenly Mansion to deal with the disciples of Heavenly Mansion. As he said this, the old man in plain clothes smiled and patted Jiang Chen's shoulder, saying, The outside world is very big and also very beautiful. But if you're not prepared, it's better to stay in Heavenly Mansion and treat this place as your home. Senior, you mean? Jiang Chun stared at the old man in plain clothes, but he was not sure if his guess was right or not. Chapter 1205. The old man's words were very obvious. Tontian Court wanted to protect Jiang Chun, but what puzzled Jiang Chun was why the old man didn't say it directly, but beat around the bush. Could it be that there was a deeper meaning? The school is only responsible for training disciples. If a disciple of the school thinks that he is strong enough, or if he thinks that the school can't teach him anything, he can leave the school, the old man said softly. With that, he looked at Jiang Chun again. After sizing him up, he frowned and asked, Do you think that Tontian Court can teach you anything? Jiang Chun was stunned for a long time. He thought about it carefully, then smiled bitterly and said, Actually, the people who come to Tontian Court basically have their own forces and their own cultivation path. Tontian Court really doesn't have anything to teach them. And then? The old man asked. They come to Tontian Court for nothing more than cultivation resources, Jiang Chun said honestly. Yes. And then? The old man continued to ask. Tontian Court knows this, but they still keep recruiting disciples. It's not to teach them cultivation, but to stabilize their foundation and heritage, Jiang Chun said. The plain-clothed old man nodded. Jiang Chun was right. But Tontian Court doesn't treat everyone equally. We are only responsible for the true geniuses and the disciples who will stay in Tontian Court in the future. As for the other disciples, they can leave if they wish. Once they walk out of Heavenspan Gardens, even if they die outside, we will not interfere, said the linen-clothed elder. At this point, the old man stared at Jiang Chun, as if waiting for Jiang Chun's answer. At this moment, Jiang Chun finally understood. He looked at the old man and asked, If I promise you that I won't leave Tontian Court in the future, will Tontian Court protect me? Of course. The old man smiled and said, With your talent and supreme fruit of the way, Tontian Court naturally wants you to stay. However, we won't force you to stay. It's up to you whether you want to leave or stay. I can stay, but I have a question. Jiang Chun frowned, not knowing what to say. However, before Jiang Chun could speak, the old man's expression turned serious, and he said in a light voice, If you become the dean of Skyspan Court, then even if you go against everyone in the world, Skyspan Court will still stand by your side. You know who I am? At this moment, Jiang Chun was alarmed. He knew that the old man wouldn't say something like this for no reason. Then, the only possibility was that the plain-clothed old man had seen through Jiang Chun's identity. Whether it's the Great Thousand World, the Six Realms, or the Ancestral Realm, they're all essentially the same. There's no difference between the living beings in the world, only the obsession in their hearts, the old man said. Senior, since you know who I am, have you ever thought about what would happen if one day the sky-reaching garden became the enemy of the whole Great Thousand World because of me? Jiang Chun said in a deep voice. What if the sky-reaching garden was destroyed because of this? Then Skyspan Court's life will come to an end, the old man said. He seemed to be very open-minded as he looked into the distance and sighed. Flowers bloom and wilt, but there's always an end. However, it's not bad if the flowers can bloom with brilliance when they bloom. I can't understand Senior's thoughts for the time being, but I think I should stay, Jiang Chun said softly. He felt that staying in Skyspan Court was not bad. If he really became the dean of Skyspan Court, wouldn't that be equivalent to owning the entire Skyspan Court? At that time, Jiang Chun would have a force of his own in the great thousand world. However, Jiang Chun was also very clear that there were too many geniuses in Skyspan Court. Although Jiang Chun had the supreme Tao fruit, he might not be able to become the dean. One had to know that those who cultivated in the Aeon Tower were the true geniuses of Skyspan Court. The world is so big, so there will be many people with supreme Tao fruits. Perhaps there are some in Skyspan Court. Jiang Chun thought to himself. If he encountered a genius who also had a supreme Tao fruit like him, then Jiang Chun's supreme Tao fruit would not be considered an advantage. In fact, if both sides had supreme Tao fruits, Jiang Chun might not be able to fight someone who was a higher level than him. Senior, there's something I still want to ask, Jiang Chun said softly as he stared at the old man and asked, what exactly does Skyspan Court see in me? The old man's expression immediately became strange. He kept looking at Jiang Chun from head to toe. After a long time, he seemed to hold his breath and muttered, they value your shamelessness. Jiang Chun was immediately dumbfounded. Was it really because he was shameless that Skyspan Court valued him? This was not appropriate, right? Big brother, I always thought that you valued my supreme Tao fruit. You're the first person who dared to openly bribe an inner court elder. The old man said snappily, your face is really damaged. The situation forced me to. Jiang Chun smiled bitterly. That's not important. The dean is planning to retire and is now looking for a successor. There are many people who want to become the dean of Skyspan Court. If you want to stand out, you need to work hard. With your current strength, it's very difficult, the old man said. After saying that, he patted Jiang Chun's shoulder and sighed softly. Do your best. The road ahead is still long. In the end, the old man left. Jiang Chun stood on the mountain peak and fell silent. He knew that Skyspan Court definitely did not value him because of his shamelessness. There must be a secret behind it. However, Jiang Chun could not figure out what he had that was worthy of Skyspan Court's attention. Was it because he came from the Six Realms? Was it because he was from the Ancestral Realm? Just as Jiang Chun was puzzled, in the deepest part of Skyspan Court, in a pavilion by a lake, the old man in linen stood there respectfully. In front of him stood a young man. He agreed. At that moment, the young man asked. His expression was calm, but there was a glimmer in his eyes. Dean, he agreed to stay, the old man said. There was a trace of doubt in his eyes. He asked, Dean, there are so many inner court disciples, and all the disciples in the Aeon Tower are extraordinary. Why do you only value him? It's not that I value him. Someone wants him to be the dean of Skyspan Court. The young man smiled bitterly. Forget it. I've been in this position for so many years, and I've long wanted to leave. Someone wants him to be the dean? Who is it? The old man in linen frowned, and then his expression changed. He pointed above his head and asked tentatively, It's them? Chapter 1206. What kind of place was Heavenly Garden? It was the top academy in the Eastern Star region. Ever since Heavenly Garden was established, it had always been in a glorious state and had never fallen. While there are quite a few elders with profound cultivations in Heavenspan Court, as well as principals with unfathomable cultivations, do you really think that Heavenspan Court will never fall with just these people? Obviously, it was impossible. None of the major forces dared to cause trouble in Heavenly Garden. It was not because they were afraid of the elders or the dean, but because there was an even more terrifying force above Heavenly Garden. That force rarely appeared in the world, and not many people in this world knew its name. Anyone who knew would be wary of that force, or even afraid of it. At this moment, the plain-clothed elder was very depressed. Why did that force value Jiang Chun so much? So, what if Jiang Chun was talented? Before he grew up, he was still an insignificant ant. And now, the dean was an almighty who had been famous for a long time. In the entire Eastern Star region, how many people dared to challenge him? Now, that force was abandoning the dean and replacing him with someone else. You only know that there is such a force, but you don't know its name, the dean said softly. A hint of respect and yearning flashed across his eyes. Then he laughed bitterly. Even with my cultivation and achievements, I can't enter that force. In the end, I'm just their gatekeeper." The plain-clothed elder's expression changed drastically. He could not imagine what kind of foundation that force had to be able to make the dean of Heavenly Garden a gatekeeper. Could it be that in order to enter that force, one's cultivation had to be at the transcendence level? However, although this world was big, how many transcendents were there? Could it be that all the living beings in that force were transcendents? "Dean, is that force really that terrifying?" the plain-clothed elder asked. "What do you think of force with the name supremacy?" the dean said. "That force is definitely not ordinary. I've only heard of it but never seen it in person. But you have to know that its name alone can intimidate many living beings. Even transcendents would not dare to be presumptuous in front of that force." "That force, what is it called?" the plain-clothed elder asked. "The Supreme Heavenly Palace." The yearning in the dean's eyes grew even stronger. A long time ago, when he had stepped into the Heavenly Palace, he had come to know about the Supreme Heavenly Palace by chance. He had asked around, and it was only after he became the head of Heavenspan Garden that he learned how terrifying that force was. He had always wanted to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace and become a part of the Supreme Heavenly Palace. Even if it was just to guard the door for the Supreme Heavenly Palace, he would be willing. But now, even though his cultivation had reached such a level, he had not even stepped through the doors of the Supreme Heavenly Palace. In fact, the people from the Supreme Heavenly Palace only treated him as a gatekeeper who guarded the Heavenly Palace. How strong must he be to have such pride and arrogance? The dean sighed. In his heart, he was extremely envious of Jiang Chun. One must know that this time, the Supreme Heavenly Palace had personally issued a decree to focus on nurturing Jiang Chun. To any living being, this was a supreme honor. "Dean, I have indeed never heard of the Supreme Heavenly Palace. But after hearing what you said, I can roughly guess the background and strength of the Supreme Heavenly Palace," the plain-clothed elder said. However, just as he finished speaking, a cold glint shot out from the dean's eyes. With a look of disdain, he said coldly, "You can think of it? Ha! You are not worthy. You don't even have the right to think about it." Ah! The plain-clothed elder was stunned, and his heart felt even colder. Only now did he realize how terrifying the Supreme Heavenly Palace was. "You may leave. Look after Jiang Chun properly. If necessary, help him out." The dean waved his hand, not wanting to talk about this matter anymore. In the end, the plain-clothed elder left, and the dean stood alone in the pavilion. He raised his head to look at the sky, and a trace of loneliness flashed across his eyes. He really wanted to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace. "If there is a day when I am given a chance, I will enter even if I die," the dean said seriously. At this moment, outside the Aeon Tower, Jiang Chun had always been curious about what kind of place the Aeon Tower was. Now that he was here, firstly, to see what the Aeon Tower looked like. Secondly, he was here to check out the place. Jiang Chun was very clear that he had killed so many people previously, and some of them had deep connections with the people in the Aeon Tower. Very good. When the Aeon Tower opened, there would definitely be people who would find trouble with him. Since he knew that there would be people who would find trouble with him, Jiang Chun naturally had to make preparations first. This place was created by the momentum of heaven and earth and formed a domain of its own. It is too difficult to set up a formation here. Half a day later, Jiang Chun looked worried. He had wanted to set up a formation to cover the entire Aeon Tower. By then, anyone who dared to find trouble with him would not be able to leave the Aeon Tower. But now, I can't set up a formation. Then I can only... Finally, Jiang Chun's eyes lit up, and his gaze landed on the door of the Aeon Tower. Since he couldn't set up a formation, then he would seal the door of the Aeon Tower. If people couldn't come out, they wouldn't be able to find trouble with Jiang Chun. Don't blame me for this. I'm just trying to protect myself." Jiang Chun sighed, then walked to the door of the Aeon Tower. He formed a seal with both hands, and runes and appendices appeared one after another. The runes and appendices spun in front of him, and following a strange trajectory, they turned into sealing runes. As Jiang Chen's speed of forming seals became faster and faster, the sealing runes fell like stars, densely sprinkling on the door of the Aeon Tower. One day later, Jiang Chen frowned and looked at the door of the Aeon Tower that had been sealed by 3 levels. He felt that the strength of the seal was not enough. After all, those who could enter the Aeon Tower were all true geniuses. Those people had been cultivating in the Aeon Tower for tens of thousands of years. Who knew how powerful they were now? Just to be safe. In the end, Jiang Chen stood in front of the door of the Aeon Tower without rest and continued to form the seal. This kid is really good at it. TSK, TSK, TSK. If I'm not wrong, there are already 8 levels of seals on the Aeon Tower, and the sealing method is special and very profound. Even if I want to break these seals, it will take me 10 days to half a month. Look at him. He still wants to add more seals. Io, there are 13 levels of seals. He is still adding more. Not far away, a group of inner yard elders secretly stared at Jiang Chen. When they saw Jiang Chen continuously forming seals, their expressions were extremely strange. Even the plain-clothed old man, hiding in the dark, was dumbfounded. He thought to himself, is he planning to seal all the living beings in the Aeon Tower? Chapter 1207. There were 3 more days before the opening of Aeon Tower. In these 3 days, Jiang Chen did not rest at all. He stood at the entrance of Aeon Tower and continued to set up seals. More than 9,000 layers of seals. Even an emperor would not be able to break it, right? TSK, TSK, TSK. This kid is really ruthless. The group of inner yard elders was stunned. Jiang Chen's speed of sealing was too fast and powerful. With more than 9,000 layers of seals, even an emperor would not be able to break it, let alone an emperor god. In fact, even an extraordinary human would probably have a headache for a while. But strangely, the group of inner yard elders just watched in the dark and did not stop Jiang Chen. This was because every time Aeon Tower opened, it meant that there would be a huge change in the upper echelons of the inner yard. One should know that all the disciples who came out of Aeon Tower had experienced a dream of eternity. Their cultivation was so high that it was unimaginable. If these disciples came out and wanted to continue staying in Tongtian Garden, they could not be treated as ordinary disciples, even if they were saints. Under normal circumstances, if those with high cultivation were willing to stay, they would be conferred the title of elder. However, the number of elders in Tongtian Garden had always been limited. If a new disciple became an elder, there would definitely be an elder who would step down. But who would want to step down? Therefore, although the group of inner yard elders was unhappy with Jiang Chen's actions, no one stopped him. They were even thinking that if the disciples in Aeon Tower could not come out, how great would that be? They could still be inner yard elders peacefully. How comfortable would that be? However, they knew that these seals were temporary. When things got out of hand, the dean would still step in. I really hope that this kid can seal everyone in Aeon Tower. Yes, time passed by slowly. 3 days later, at this moment, there were a total of 13,600 layers of seals on the Aeon Tower's door. Moreover, each layer of seal was extremely powerful. Ordinary people would not be able to break it. And now, with these 13,600 layers of seals, even if an extraordinaire were to come, it would probably be enough to cause a lot of trouble. Buzz! After a dozen breaths of time, a rumbling sound came from the Aeon Tower. Then, the door of the Aeon Tower opened. In an instant, a fiery red figure rushed out from inside and roared. Now, who among the inner yard disciples dares to go against me? Bang! However, as soon as he finished speaking, he crashed into the 13,600 layers of seals. The impact was shocking, and the young man's forehead was swollen. Holy T? At this moment, the young man was dumbfounded. He looked at the door, and his face darkened. Who the *CK placed a seal here? The young man shouted angrily. Then he raised his palm and the might of a godly emperor erupted. He threw a punch at the seal, and an earth-shattering explosion rang out. However, it was useless. This punch was like a stone sinking into the sea, not even causing the slightest ripple. What are you yelling for? Do you think you're invincible? At this moment, another young man appeared at the door of the Aeon Tower. He looked at the fiery red young man provocatively and then frowned. He looked at the door and said in a low voice, "Seal? How you're good. You do it." The fiery red young man pointed at the door with disdain and said, "This seal is not ordinary. I wonder who's so wicked. It's just a seal." The young man who came later had an arrogant look on his face. He formed a seal with his hands and said, "Don't you know that I'm best at seals?" Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, the young man pushed out his palm. The runes and talismans shone brightly. He was going to break the seal with his skillful power. However, it was useless. Although he had broken one layer of the seal, there were still 13,559 layers left. Moreover, Jiang Chun stood outside the door. When he sensed that one layer of the seal had been broken, he immediately patched it up again. Is this a new rule set by Tongtian Garden? If we want to leave the Aeon Tower, we have to break the seal first? Holy sh**t? What's going on? Why are there so many seals? Did that goddamn thing do this? As time passed, more and more people walked out of the Aeon Tower. However, they were all blocked at the door. Some people kept attacking, while others were breaking the seal. However, a day later, their minds were blown to pieces. 36 disciples of the Aeon Tower had been attacking the seal for an entire day. However, the seal seemed to be endless, and there was no end in sight. Let me see what's up. At this moment, a young man used a secret technique. A vertical eye appeared on his forehead. Then, runes of the great Tao shot out like a ray of light. The ray of light broke through the layers of seals. Then, he saw Jiang Chun patching up the seal outside the door. Holy sh**t. At this moment, the young man cursed and his face darkened. I knew it. We've broken at least 5,000 to 6,000 layers of seals today. Why isn't there any movement from the seal? So someone is patching it up outside. No way. Are they going to seal us in the Aeon Tower? The elders in the inner court don't care. In an instant, the disciples in the Aeon Tower were completely dumbfounded. Who is it? So wicked. We're breaking the seal inside, and you're patching it up outside? Brat outside. I know you can hear us. Quickly remove the seal. Otherwise, we'll kill you when we come out. Brat, did you eat a leopard's guts? Do you know who we are? Quickly remove the seal. At this moment, many people shouted angrily. There was no lack of emperor gods and even emperors. However, Jiang Chun smiled and said, "You want to kill me? Do you think I'll let you out? Fellow cultivator, you're the one who started this. I promise you that as long as you remove the seal, I won't do anything to you when I come out. Fellow cultivator, we have no enmity. Why did you seal us here?" Many people were confused. They had been in the Aeon Tower for a long time. Before entering, they had never offended Jiang Chun. They didn't even know Jiang Chun. Since they didn't know him, how could there be enmity? I'll tell you the truth. I've killed many people in the inner court. Some of them have a good relationship with you. I'm worried that you'll avenge them when you come out, Jiang Chun said jokingly. So, for the sake of my life, you can't come out. Brat, who did you kill? With your cultivation, who can you kill in the inner court? Many people asked anxiously. Some of them were confused. They didn't believe that Jiang Chun had such strength. After all, in their eyes, Jiang Chun was just a divine king. Chapter 1208. Some were angry, some were puzzled, and most of them did not believe it. They all knew how strong the inner court disciples were. The lowest cultivation was a high-level God King. Jiang Chun, a kid who had just entered the God King realm, could kill other inner court disciples? It's up to you to believe it or not, but it's up to me to let you out, Jiang Chun mocked. As he spoke, he continued to strengthen the seal. This made the group of people inside anxious. According to the speed of Jiang Chun's seal, even if they joined forces, it would be difficult for them to rush out of the Aeon Tower. Of course, there were also people who were not anxious. After all, using the seal required a large amount of divine power. They did not believe that Jiang Chun could keep sealing like this. However, 3 days later, the group of people in the Aeon Tower was completely dumbfounded. It was because Jiang Chun had been strengthening the seal for 3 consecutive days without stopping. The divine power in his body seemed to be inexhaustible. At this moment, someone's face darkened as he said in a muffled voice, "What do you want to let us out?" "Oh, compromise?" Jiang Chun chuckled and said, "It's very simple. Swear on your souls that you won't attack me after you come out. Otherwise, we'll just wait like this." As soon as he said this, there were immediately a few angry curses, especially those emperors. How could they endure such humiliation? A dignified emperor actually had to swear to a god king. Wasn't this a joke? If it were anyone else, they would probably not agree. "Kid, you have to think carefully. If the elders of the inner court know about this, they won't let you off. If the dean knows about this, won't he expel you from Tong Tian Garden?" Faced with these words, Jiang Chun laughed again and even laughed out loud. This laughter was very loud, but when it landed in the ears of everyone, it was as if he was mocking them. It's been a few days, and such a big thing happened in the Aeon Tower. If those elders and the dean wanted to interfere, they would have done so long ago, Jiang Chun said. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the group of people in the Aeon Tower changed. Only then did they realize that Jiang Chun had been blocking them here for a few days, but not a single elder came to solve it. In that case, there was a huge problem. Could it be that Heavenspan Court values him? There's definitely something extraordinary about this brat. Perhaps the dean thinks highly of him. Otherwise, how could a mere divine king dare to act so impudently in the inner court? Under all kinds of guesses, someone finally compromised. Someone said directly, "There are so many of us here. Even if I swear, you can't let me go out alone, right?" One must know that Jiang Chun sealed the entire Wangu Tower. In the eyes of ordinary people, unless the seal was broken, how could an individual leave? Once the seal was broken, everyone in the Aeon Tower would be able to leave. "As long as you swear, I can let you out," Jiang Chun said. "You can take me out alone? How do you expect me to believe you?" That person frowned. He felt that Jiang Chun was somewhat unreliable. One had to know that a sealing technique was different from a formation. It was impossible to open a corner and let someone out. If the seal was to be broken, it had to be completely broken. "You can try. I promise I won't lie to you." Jiang Chun's eyes shone brightly. He was very confident in his sealing attainments. After a dozen breaths, someone finally couldn't take it anymore and made a soul oath in front of Jiang Chun. When he had just taken a soul oath, the crowd witnessed Jiang Chun weaving hand signs one after another. Many sealing talismans unexpectedly turned into thin threads, which fell on the man's body. Then, the thin line suddenly pulled, and the person was actually pulled out of the Aeon Tower alone. "Brat, you got guts." After this person came out of the Aeon Tower, he stared at Jiang Chun with a murderous look. However, due to the oath, he didn't dare to attack Jiang Chun. He could only stare at him. "There's no other way. It's to protect myself." Jiang Chun smiled bitterly. Then, Jiang Chun looked at the other people in the Aeon Tower and asked, "What about you guys? Do you plan to stay in there for the rest of your life, or make an oath?" "I'm a dignified emperor. If I make an oath to you, the divine king, where will my face go? If you didn't trick us with your cultivation, I could suppress you with a flip of my hand." "Brat, don't go too far. Let us out now, and we'll let bygones be bygones." In this regard, Jiang Chun was too lazy to speak and began to condense the seal again. At this time, the people inside were completely anxious. "Because your attitude towards me was not good and very disrespectful, I've changed my mind," Jiang Chun said softly. "Previously, if you wanted to come out, you only needed to swear that you wouldn't attack me. Now, I'm going to add a condition. Those who want to come out not only can't attack me, but they also have to protect me. Of course, it won't be long. 1 year will do, Jiang said. "What are you talking about? Are you courting death? Do you really think you can trap us here for the rest of our lives? You're courting death." Many people shouted angrily, feeling that Jiang was humiliating them. In this regard, Jiang raised his eyebrows and shook his head, saying, "I've changed my mind again. 2 years. You, shut up. Stop talking. If you continue, we'll have to protect him for the rest of his life after we get out." At this moment, many people hurriedly dissuaded him. Moreover, some people directly swore to agree to Jiang request. If there was a first, there would be a second. If there was a second, there would be a third. Just like this, after a dozen breaths of time, 16 people swore a soul oath and walked out of the Aeon Tower. As for the rest, their cultivation was generally at the Emperor God level. There were also a few emperors. These few people relied on their high cultivation and were unwilling to bow down to Jiang, the Divine King. Moreover, they also believed that it wouldn't be long before the inner court elders, and even the dean, came forward to solve this matter. "I'm not in a hurry. You're not in a hurry either. Let's take our time," Jiang said softly, and simply sat down cross-legged. Then, he lay down and formed a seal. His leisurely and carefree attitude made the people inside so angry that they almost vomited blood. As for those who had already come out of the Aeon Tower, they stood beside Jiang. All of them had unspeakable bitterness and were extremely uncomfortable in their hearts. They originally thought that after coming out of the Aeon Tower, they would definitely be able to summon the wind and summon the rain in the inner court. Who would have thought that they would be blocked by others? Most importantly, they were forced to swear a soul oath. Not only could they not attack Jiang, but they also had to protect Jiang for 2 years. What did this mean? It meant that in these 2 years, they would be Jiang's free fighters and bodyguards. It's been 10 days. None of the inner court elders came. The dean didn't appear either. 10 days later, someone let out a long sigh. He was even more fearful of Jiang. After all, there was such a huge commotion here. In the end, none of the inner court higher-ups appeared. Many people naturally guessed the reason behind this. Chapter 1209. Jiang blocked the entrance, and behind him stood a group of monsters who had come out from the Aeon Tower. All of them had strange expressions on their faces, especially those whose cultivation levels were much higher than Jiang's. They were all guessing how Jiang was stronger than them to be valued so highly by Tong Tian Garden. Some people even saw the group of elders hiding in the dark and observing. Seeing that they didn't make a move, the group of monsters was even more puzzled. This group of elders clearly saw everything, but they hid in the dark and didn't make a move. What's going on? Could it be that this kid is valued by the higher-ups? He's going to be in charge of Tong Tian Garden in the future. Many people were stunned. If that was the case, then no matter what, they couldn't offend Jiang. Don't add more seals. I'll make an oath, okay? What a sin. I'm convinced. I'll make an oath. After another 3 days, the group of people finally couldn't take it anymore and compromised. In the end, the group of geniuses in the Aeon Tower all swore not to attack Jiang and to protect Jiang unconditionally. You guys should have done this earlier. At that moment, Jiang stood outside the Aeon Tower and looked at the group of monsters beside him. He joked, "From now on, I'm going to do whatever I want in Tong Tian Garden. Do you have any objections?" The group of people was immediately speechless, especially a few of the emperors. Their faces were extremely dark. They had been in seclusion in the Aeon Tower for many years and thought that they could do whatever they wanted in Tong Tian Garden after coming out. But who would have thought that Jiang, such a scourge, would appear in this batch of Tong Tian Garden disciples? But now, even though their cultivations were monstrous, they still didn't dare to disobey Jiang because they had sworn an oath. And with such a group of monsters behind him, Jiang could really do whatever he wanted in Tong Tian Garden. Now, not to mention Long Xuanji and Kong Lingxiong, even the group of elders in the inner yard, Jiang did not care about them at all. You won't understand the loneliness of being invincible. Jiang Chen let out a long sigh and looked up at the sky with a lonely expression. How despicable! Where did this kid come from? What a sneaky move! Many people cursed in their hearts, wishing they could cut Jiang Chen into 1,000 pieces. Senior brother, you're finally out. Jiang Chen, you're here too. Perfect. Right at that moment, a few people rushed over. When they saw the group of monsters coming out of Wangu Tower, they were all excited. Then they told him about what Jiang Chen had done in the inner yard, thinking that this group of monsters should be able to suppress Jiang Chen. However, after hearing these words, the geniuses remained where they were despite being infuriated and filled with murderous intent. They did not dare to attack Jiang Chen. Cough, cough, you still want to kill me? Jiang Chen said disdainfully. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a sinister smile. He pointed at the group of monsters behind him and said, "Now, they'll listen to me." What? Jiang Chen, even if you have the supreme Tao fruit, these senior brothers are all monsters. How can they submit to you? A few of them did not believe him and asked further. However, the group of people who came out of Wangu Tower became more and more furious, especially the emperors. They really wanted to slap these people to death. Why did they have to mention it? All of you, shut up. It's not up to you to decide who we want to follow. Get lost. It's normal for you to be killed because you're not strong enough. You can't blame others. A few freaks angrily rebuked, and this stunned those people. What the hell? What the hell happened? Hiss. All the monsters who came out of Wangu Tower are following Jiang Chen. Something big has happened. After those people left, the news spread throughout the inner yard. Finally, the entire Heavenly Garden knew about it. As for Jiang Chen, who was directly involved in this matter, he started to wander around the inner yard with these geniuses. That pace, that demeanor, it was simply unparalleled. They were just short of ascending to heaven. Hiss. Isn't this fellow Taoist Jiang Chen? I borrowed some rare treasures from you before. Today, I'm returning them to you. This is the interest. Yo, brother Jiang Chen, long time no see. Come, I have high-quality pills here. Just like that, Jiang Chen walked around the inner yard. Not only did he take back the rare treasures and source crystal that he had given away, but he also received a lot of interest. Kid, are you going to let us follow you like this forever? We still have to cultivate. Don't waste our time. One day later, the group of people could not take it anymore. Jiang Chen brought them everywhere to show off. They did not stop for a moment. This kid even went to the Hall of Elders and flaunted his prowess in front of a group of Inner Academy elders. That almost made the group of Inner Yard elders explode with anger. Previously, Jiang Chen had even bribed them. Now he came to show off. If it was before, these elders would probably kill Jiang Chen with a slap. But now, those monsters following behind Jiang Chen were extremely powerful. Even if a group of Inner Yard elders joined forces, they would probably not be able to stop that group of monsters. What a sin. If I knew this would happen, I would have stopped him when he was forming the seal. We have no face left. We are the Inner Yard elders, but we are humiliated by this kid. At this moment, Jiang Chen did not care about other people's opinions at all. He liked to do whatever he wanted. It made him feel invincible. President, that kid is too good at causing trouble. Not only did he run amok in the inner yard, he even went to the Elder Hall and showed off in front of the group of elders. In the depths of Heavenly Gardens, in a pavilion by the lake, a plain-clothed old man stood respectfully in front of the president. His expression was strange, and there was a hint of anger in his eyes. One had to know that the rules of Heavenly Gardens were very strict. However, after Jiang Chen caused such a ruckus, all the rules were broken. The rules of Heavenly Gardens have been set for a long time. It's time to change them, the president said softly. Times are changing, and so are people. The rules cannot remain unchanged. But if this continues, what will the other disciples think? The plain-clothed old man frowned. Although the rules of Heavenly Gardens are strict, they treat all disciples equally. Now this Jiang Chen, others will think that we are protecting him. So what if we are? So what if I'm shielding him? The president pursed his lips and pointed above. Someone from the top is here. In a few days, the top academies of the 4 major star fields will fight. In the past, the higher-ups never sent anyone for the Star Field Academy battle. This time, they actually sent someone. Could it be because of Jiang Chun? The plain-clothed old man exclaimed, his eyes widening. Heavenly Gardens can't be planning to send Jiang Chun to fight, right? His cultivation realm. Every academy will send 3 disciples. According to the higher-ups, Jiang Chun will be included, the president said with a faint smile. The dean said with a faint smile, perhaps our Heavenspan court will be able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat in the upcoming Starfield Academy battle. Chapter 1210. The Supreme Heavenly Palace had never interfered in Tongtian Garden's matters. Even if Tongtian Garden was destroyed, they would probably not do anything. This was because in the eyes of the Supreme Heavenly Palace, Tongtian Garden was just a force that they supported. It was just a place for them to find true geniuses. According to what the dean knew, there were at least a dozen places like this. There were even a few that were not weaker than Tongtian Garden. Since the establishment of Tongtian Garden, no one from the Supreme Heavenly Palace had come. At most, they would give a decree to tell Tongtian Garden what to do. But now, the Supreme Heavenly Palace had sent someone, and they had even specifically asked Jiang Chun to participate in the Star Domain Academy battle. The meaning behind this was indeed worth pondering. Dean, are you so willing to give up your position? The old man asked with a trace of displeasure in his eyes. He had always been close to the dean, and the two could be said to have walked the same path. Now, seeing that the dean was about to give up his position, he was naturally unhappy. I have lived my entire life. Now, as long as the Supreme Heavenly Palace still needs me, I can still do things for them, Dean Gu said. Dean Gu Jilai said, perhaps one day, the Supreme Heavenly Palace will allow me to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace on account of me working for them. You don't care about your reputation just to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace? The old man could not understand. Ever since Gu Jin became the dean of Tongtian Garden, he had been respected by everyone. Not to mention the entire Great Thousand World, his status was one of the best in the Eastern Star Domain. Now, in order to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace, Gu Jinlai did not even care about his reputation and did not even fight for it. This was indeed hard to understand. But Gu Jinlai did not want to explain further. He knew that the old man did not know the background of the Supreme Heavenly Palace, so there were some things that could not be explained clearly. Go and prepare. The Star Domain Academy battle concerns the right to enter the Great Thousand Mine. If Tongtian Garden can win this time, we can enter the Great Thousand Mine, Gu Jinlai said. At the mention of the Great Thousand Mine, the old man's expression changed instantly. The Great Thousand Mine was a famous forbidden area in the entire Great Thousand World. Legend had it that there were countless rare ores in the Great Thousand Mine that could be forged into divine weapons. There were also some magical items, ancestral dragon bone, real phoenix blood, and even some long-lost Dao techniques. Great Thousand Mine, in particular, the Great Thousand Mine was filled with corpses, and those corpses were from the ancestral realm. That was why every living being in the Great Thousand World wanted to enter the Great Thousand Graveyard. Because the ancestral realm had the secret of invincibility. In the face of invincibility, who could remain calm? Dean, with Jiang Chen's cultivation level, even if he participates in the battle of the Star Zone Academies, it will be difficult for him to win. Why don't we put our hopes on those imperial disciples? The old man asked. Let's leave everything up to fate, Gu Jilai replied. In the end, the plain-clothed elder left to prepare for the Star Field Academy battle. At the same time, Jiang Chun came to the Taoist sanctum with a group of geniuses. Sect Red Sect. Sect Garden Sect S Red. Sect B Sect Garden. After all, many of the people in the Taoist sanctum had wanted to kill Jiang Chun. Clear the place. At this moment, Jiang Chun waved his hand in a seemingly casual manner and said in a casual tone, Don't worry. What? Jiang Chun, this is Tongtian Garden Sect. It's not yours, Jiang Chun. Don't think that you can do whatever you want in Tongtian Garden just because you have the support of a group of monsters from the Aeon Tower. Jiangchen smiled mockingly and said, I can do whatever I want. What's wrong with that? Are you not happy with that? Then, Jiangchen pointed at the person who had just spoken and said, this person wanted to kill me. Now, it seems that he still wants to kill me. Everyone, it's time to attack. He hasn't attacked you yet. This is Tantian Garden. You can't attack. The faces of the group of geniuses standing behind Jiangchen were all gloomy. They thought to themselves that Jiangchen was really treating them as his hired thugs. Others need to follow the rules of Tantian Garden, but I don't. Jiangchen raised his eyebrows and waved his hand. A large pile of intersect elders' tokens fell in front of everyone. I'm representing all of the elders of the inner courtyard, Jiangchen said sarcastically. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. They couldn't imagine how Jiangchen had managed to get all of the identity tokens of the Inner Institute's elders. This was too daring. I know this person. You let him go. One of the monsters smiled bitterly and said, just treat it as me working for you. You pay me a salary in exchange for his life. Oh, salary? Jiangchen was stunned. He glanced at the monster and asked, do you think I'll pay you a salary if you work for me as my hired thug? Aren't you thinking too much? The moment these words were spoken, the freak's face immediately darkened. He had heard that Jiangchen was extremely wealthy. He didn't expect him to be so stingy. Fine. I'll spare him for your sake. Jiangchen waved his hand. He didn't intend to kill anyone. Then, he waved his hand and said in a low voice, go and clear the place. Without waiting for the monsters around him to attack, the people in the Tantian Garden walked out. What kind of joke was this? How could they resist? Not to mention Jiangchen's fighting prowess. The group of geniuses around him were all too powerful. None of them were easy to deal with. Moreover, Jiangchen had so many elders' tokens. Wherever he went, the elders would be there in person. If they didn't agree, wouldn't they be disobeying the elders? That's right, Jiangchen chuckled. Then he looked at the two young men beside him and said, you two escort me in. The two young men were the strongest among those who came out of the Aeon Tower. Their cultivation had reached the Emperor realm. At that moment, their faces were ugly. They were being ordered around by Jiangchen. However, they had already made the oath. What else could they do? Then, under the protection of the two young emperors, Jiangchen stared at the suppression in the Tantian Garden and walked toward the ancient temple. Along the way, his gaze fell on the altar in the ancient temple. The statue on it gave him a sense of déjà vu. It was as if he was related to it. You're interested in that statue? One of the young emperors asked curiously. That thing is very ordinary. Perhaps it was placed there casually by the ancestors. I'm very rich. Now, I like ordinary things, Jiangchen said. The young emperor's mouth twitched when he heard that. He thought to himself, what a pretentious act. Blatant flaunting of wealth. Chapter 12:11. With the protection of the two emperors, Jiangchen arrived in front of the ancient temple very quickly. At this moment, his eyes stared at the statue, and that wisp of familiarity in his heart became stronger and stronger. Buzz! Suddenly, a tremor sounded. The others could not hear it. Only Jiangchen's ears were shaken until they went numb, and his vision turned pitch black, seemingly fainting. But in an instant, another ray of light appeared in front of Jiangchen's eyes. Immediately after, battle cries filled the sky. A ray of light turned into 7 colors, and it was even accompanied by the color of blood. Jiangchen opened his eyes and looked around. Everywhere he passed was filled with the flames of war. There were emperors fighting, and there were also transcendents risking their lives. Divine kings were countless, and divine emperor and divine venerable powerhouses were like stars in the sky, illuminating the entire starry sky. This was a great battle of unparalleled proportions. Heavenly Star, you're self-destructing. No one can change the outcome, yet you insist on going against the heavens. Even the heavens can't tolerate you. Above the heavens, there's the holy. You can't resist. Right at this moment, Jiang Chun heard a series of angry roars. He looked towards the source of the voice. In the depths of the distant starry sky, in a stretch of darkness, there was a stalwart man standing there. At his feet, there were actually transcendent corpses, and there were even star fragments floating around him. The surrounding power of great Tao could not get close to him, and the myriad Tao laws were even trampled under his feet. And this person's appearance was actually exactly the same as Jiang Chen's. After experiencing all sorts of things previously, Jiang Chen instantly understood at this moment. This man was none other than his previous life. Heavenly Star. And in front of Heavenly Star, there were more than a dozen living beings. There were dragons, tigers, and also Taodais and even star beasts. The cultivation of these living beings had all reached the transcendent level. However, Jiang Chen saw that there was not a trace of fear in Heavenly Star's eyes. Not a trace of fear. He was so calm. When his eyes opened and closed, the sun, moon, stars, and the four seas of the universe were all reversing. This is the boundless world, not above the heavens. That holy light still can't shine here. We will move forward on our own. Why should we submit to an unknown world just because of a decree? Heaven Star spoke, his expression still very calm. But soon, anger appeared in his eyes. It was all because the entire great world was collapsing, various great worlds wiping out, creatures falling like a meteor shower, disappearing in a flash. Clearly, this battle had lasted for a long time. Now it was already out of control. The entire Great Thousand World was about to be smashed apart. The fury in Heavenly Star's eyes erupted as he roared. Such a vast world with hundreds of races. Do you want to watch them perish? Isn't this your home? There's no point in saying more. The world needs a great purification to wash away all impurities and rebuild a perfect world. Those dozen or so creatures spoke, their eyes devoid of any emotions. Just as they had said, they did not care whether the great wide world would still exist or whether all the living beings in the world would die out. They were only following a single decree, which was to cleanse this world. Ignorant. Heaven Star's face was full of anger. The moment his voice fell, he rushed out. At this moment, Jiang Chun could not see anything. A dazzling brilliance blossomed before his eyes, as if countless stars had exploded. He could only hear the sound of fighting, as if a great bell had been rung, shaking until his soul was trembling. No idea how much time had passed either. When that radiance disappeared, Jiang Chun saw that everything before his eyes had changed. The corpses of those who died in battle had disappeared, the extraordinaries were also gone, and Heaven Star was also nowhere to be found. Only a pitch-black hole appeared in the void, seemingly leading to a certain place. Even if you reincarnate for thousands of lifetimes, it's hard to change the fate of this world. Finally, Jiang Chun heard this sentence, and then everything before his eyes disappeared. At this moment, Jiang Chun woke up and was stunned for a moment. He secretly thought, was what he saw before the final battle as Heaven Star? After that battle, Heaven Star was reincarnated? Could that black hole be the entrance to the path of reincarnation? Also, who was that last voice coming from? Could it be that there was still a great enemy alive? It disappeared? What's going on? Where's the statue? Suddenly, someone cried out in surprise. No one saw how the statue suddenly disappeared. Even Jiang Chun was dumbfounded. He looked around and did not find any trace of the statue at all. However, at this moment, strands of divine light appeared on Jiang Chen's body. The radiance was resplendent, but it was covered by a layer of special substance. So hot. At this moment, Jiang Chen's expression was somewhat distorted. He felt his entire body heat up, as if his entire body was about to combust. His bones were crackling, his blood was boiling, and even his soul had turned into radiance, floating up in the soul world. This was like a transformation. His physical body and soul had entered a large furnace and were refining. I will move forward on my own path. No one can stop me. Vaguely, Jiang Chen seemed to hear Heaven Star's voice, sounding from the depths of his soul. Following that, Jiang Qin's head seemed to explode. With a shocking explosion, he lost consciousness and slowly fell to the ground. What? Hey? Are you okay? Are you dead? At this moment, the two emperors guarding Jiang Qin were dumbfounded. He was still alive just now. How did he suddenly faint? They wanted to investigate Jiang Qin's situation, but discovered that a domain had appeared beside Jiang Qin. This domain was not large, just enveloping about 3 feet around Jiang Qin. And as emperors, they were actually unable to step into this domain. What's going on? What level of domain is this? Even we emperors can't step in? And just as everyone was puzzled, Jiang Qin's body was undergoing an astonishing transformation. The spirit bodies that had been shed earlier were rapidly fusing, and at the same time, many more spirit bodies were shed. Moreover, this transformation speed was very fast. In just over a dozen breaths of time, Jiang Qin had shed over 1,000 spirit bodies, and they were all fusing in an instant. His aura was constantly rising, but his cultivation did not increase in the slightest. At the same time, his soul collapsed, but it was instantly reformed. Every time it collapsed, every time it reformed, his soul would expel many impurities. After collapsing 36 times, when Jiang Qin's soul reformed again, the light of his soul became pure and flawless, as if it was the purest ray of light in the world. What's going on with me? After a dozen breaths of time, Jiang Qin slowly woke up, as if he had just woken up from a dream, as if a lifetime had passed. But he quickly reacted, lifting up his sleeves to look at his arm. At this moment, Jiang Qin's mind was greatly moved. The excitement in his eyes was truly difficult to conceal. Fused? Jiang Qin was excited. He could feel that his body had undergone a great change. Chapter 12:12. Not only was his physical body sublimated, but his soul was also sublimated. Upon closer inspection, every inch of Jiang Qin's skin was emitting divine light, and every pore seemed to have a god sitting cross-legged, chanting ancient and obscure scriptures. This was very mysterious, but outsiders couldn't see it because there was a layer of dense fog rising and falling on Jiang Qin's body. He seemed to be surrounded by chaos, and he looked very mysterious, giving people a feeling that they couldn't see through him. Why do I feel that this guy has become stronger again? What a monster! Can he fight against an emperor? Many people were shocked, and they stared at Jiang Qin, feeling that a great monster had appeared in this world. Everyone, don't worry. I'm not that strong, and I can't fight against an emperor. Jiang Qin chuckled, looking very humble. However, when these words fell into everyone's ears, it was like a sudden clap of thunder. What do you mean you can't fight against an emperor? Brother, be reasonable. You're just a divine king. If you can really fight against an emperor, wouldn't you be able to do whatever you want in this world? Moreover, you can't fight against an emperor. But from your tone, it shouldn't be a problem for you to deal with an emperor, right? Thinking of this, naturally, there were people who were dissatisfied. A genius who came out of the Aeon Tower, with the cultivation of an emperor god, looked at Jiang Qin and said, "Although there is an oath that I can attack you, as long as you agree, I still want to spar with you. This so many people are watching. Isn't it inappropriate?" Jiang Qin muttered, somewhat unwilling. Hearing this, the young man's eyes narrowed, and then he curled his lips and said with slight contempt, "You don't dare? Then why do you have to say such big words? We won't believe it." No, you misunderstand. I'm afraid you'll lose face." Jiang Qin said directly. As long as you agree." The young man raised his eyebrows and said, "If you didn't trick us before, how could we submit to you? I have resentment in my heart, so I can only spar with you to vent it." "Oh, since that's the case, let's do it," Jiang Qin said softly. After that, Jiang Qin walked out of the training hall, and the crowd made way for them. "You're just a god king. Do you really think that you can fight against a god emperor who is 2 realms above you? How laughable!" The young man shouted, and his Tao surged. Divine light fell from the void and bloomed on his body. He stretched out a palm, and the great Tao laws appeared in his palm. They were like immortal divine chains that shot towards Jiang Chun. Boom! In the next moment, there was a loud explosion. Jiang Chun punched out with his bare hands. His fist was plain, but it gave people a feeling of invincibility. Beneath this punch, the laws that were like divine chains were actually shattered. At the same time, the fist didn't slow down in the slightest as it shot towards the young man. He's going against the Grand Tao laws with his bare hands? How strong is this guy's body? Everyone cried out in alarm. Even the young man was shocked. He hurriedly retreated, and at the same time, he formed a seal with both hands. Along with his divine power and the laws, moonlight sprinkled down. Under the moonlight, it was as if everything was still. Even Jiang Chen's fist seemed to be frozen in the air. Stagnation technique. This is a top-notch Tao technique. Along with the crowd's exclamation, the fist that was frozen in the air suddenly shone brightly. It was like the sun, and with a whoosh, it broke through the void. Boom! When the fist appeared again, it had already hit the young man. Poof! With a muffled sound, the young man's body shook violently. His chest caved in, and blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His body was trembling slightly, and at the same time his hands formed a seal again. Another ray of moonlight sprinkled down. This time, the crowd was surprised to see that there were actually 3 bright moons in the sky. This is interesting, Jiang Chen whispered. A force landed on his body. Not only did it slow down his movements, but it also slowed down the circulation of the divine power in his body. Buzz! However, in just an instant, the inextinguishable fire in Jiang Chen's body burst forth. It seemed to be able to burn everything, and it even burned the strange force to nothing. Then, Jiang Chen took a step forward and used the distance shrinking technique. His figure was like a ghost. Before the young man could react, Jiang Chen appeared in front of him. At the same time, he pressed his palm against the young man's forehead. At this moment, as long as Jiang Chen used a little force, he would be able to smash the young man's head and shatter his divine soul. Do you believe me now? Jiang Chen chuckled and raised his eyebrows at the young man. How did you cultivate? I have cultivated in the Aeon Tower for 10,000 years. My foundation is deep and solid. Not to mention those in the same realm. I even have the power to fight against an emperor. The young man asked, his face full of shock. Oh, from what you've said, with my current strength, I can challenge an emperor. I think that's too high profile, isn't it? Jiang Chun scratched his head. He seemed a little embarrassed and a little humble. However, many people almost fainted. Brother, are you speaking human language? How can a divine king be able to challenge an emperor? How can we, as cultivators, have any dignity left? Let me try it with you. At this moment, the young man who had escorted Jiang Chun into the training hall spoke. He was a real emperor. When Jiang Chun heard that, of course, he agreed. After all, he also wanted to try his peak combat strength. However, he decided to set up an array and barrier so that no one could see it. Then, at Jiang Chen's request, he set up an array to block the view of the crowd. Then, the two of them stepped into the array and barrier and started a battle between a divine king and an emperor. This battle lasted for a long time. No one could see the battle, but they could hear continuous explosions. After half a day, the array and barrier disappeared. Everyone saw Jiang Chun lying on the ground. He was soft as if he was dead. He is dead, someone exclaimed. When the young emperor heard that, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. He can't be killed. As he said that, he rubbed his blackened face and eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. He muttered with a strange expression, "If he reaches the supreme God realm, he will be invincible under the transcendence, let alone an emperor." The young emperor's voice was very soft, but it was still heard by the crowd. At this moment, everyone was moved. What kind of combat strength did he have to be able to make an emperor acknowledge him? Hiss, it hurts. I still can't challenge an emperor. At this moment, Jiang Chun got up from the ground. His face was still stained with blood, But upon closer inspection, there were no injuries on his body. No. To be sure, his injuries had already healed in such a short time. I say, can you be a human? The young emperor's face was very ugly. He should be able to look down on his peers as an emperor at such a young age. However, in front of Jiang Chun, he felt that he was nothing. Chapter 12-13. The group of monsters that came out of the Aeon Tower were completely convinced. A divine king could make an emperor acknowledge his strength. This was enough to explain everything. Where did Tong Tian Court find such a monster? With him, how are we going to survive in the future? Not to mention Tong Tian Court. In the future, we won't be able to survive in the same generation. Only now did they understand why the group of disciples from the inner court wanted to kill Jiang Chun. This was because once this fellow was allowed to grow, how many people in the same generation would be able to be his match? All of you move to the side. Jiang Chun, Lin Hao, Mu Zhu, the three of you come to the Elders' Hall. Suddenly, a slightly old voice sounded. This was the voice of the inner court's Grand Elder. Jiang Chun was stunned. He was asking him to go to the Elders' Hall at this time? Could it be that he was going to settle accounts with him? I'm not going. Jiang Chun shouted at the top of his voice. What kind of joke was this? Previously, he brought a group of monsters from the Aeon Tower to show off at the entrance of the Elders' Hall. Now he wanted Jiang Chun to go to the Elders' Hall. Jiang Chun felt that he absolutely could not go. If he went, he might be gone. It's not up to you. At this moment, a palm stretched out from the Elders' Hall. Like a five-fingered cage, it pressed down on Jiang Chun. Jiang Chun panicked. The divine power in his body boiled, and the shrinking earth was activated to the extreme. However, this palm seemed to have a spirit. It was also like a layer of black curtain that could not be escaped. No matter how fast Jiang Chun was, he could not escape from the palm's range. In the end, Jiang Chun was caught and taken to the Elders' Hall as if he were a chick being pinched. At the same time, the two young emperors from the Aeon Tower, Lin Hao and Mu Zhu, also arrived. When they saw Jiang Chun, who was suppressed on the ground, their expressions became extremely odd. Jiang Chun was pinned to the ground. His four limbs were flailing, and he was struggling. At the same time, he was shouting. The respect he had for the elders was not reflected in him at all. You old bastards! Not only did you take my treasures, you're even suppressing me now. You can't do this. Let me go. Hearing Jiang Chun's words, the faces of the group of elders turned extremely ugly. Big brother, can you be gentler? Putting aside the fact that he was openly bribing the elders, he was actually shouting in the Elder Hall. Even if you don't find it embarrassing, we do. Replying to your honor, this person is Jiang Chun. Are you sure that the person you are looking for is him? At this moment, the Grand Elder of the inner courtyard was looking at a man at the front of the hall. The man sat on the throne with a calm expression, but when he looked at Jiang Chun, there was a hint of mockery in his eyes. He nodded and said, "Let him go. This kid is very mischievous. If you let him go, he might cause trouble." The Grand Elder hurriedly advised, "Just let him lie there like this." "Grand Elder, he asked you to let me go. How dare you not listen?" Jiang Chun shouted. He could tell that the person sitting on the throne was not simple at all. "Kid, shut the hell up. This is the Elder Hall. You took my treasures. Don't be rude. You took my treasures. You, say something else. Then let me go." At this moment, Jiang Chun was also angry. Being suppressed like this, I don't want to lose face. Since I've lost face, then everyone will lose face together. Young man, it's easy to break too hard. They are elders. As a disciple, shouldn't you respect them? The man sitting on the throne asked. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. "Respect my ass. They took my heavenly treasures. I bribed them." Jiang Chun shouted. "Kid, shut up. Don't mention this again." This kid doesn't know how to shut his mouth. "Jiang Chun, how can you talk to the Supreme One like that? He's the Supreme, one of the Supreme Heavenly Palace. You better be careful." However, the man from the Supreme Heavenly Palace smiled and waved his hand. He asked again, Do you think that you can do whatever you want here because the heavenly palace values you? Under normal circumstances, Jiang Chun would have to be humble and at least leave some face for the heavenly palace. Unexpectedly, Jiang Chun nodded and said, "That's right. What about it? Aren't you afraid that the heavenly palace will abandon you?" The man asked again, "What's there to be afraid of? You only have one life. If you don't become a transcendent, you won't be able to escape the cycle of life and death. As long as you're alive, you should bloom," Jiang Chun said seriously. Buzz. As soon as he said that, a buzzing sound rang out. The man waved his hand and released the restriction on Jiang Chun. Then he clapped his hands and nodded. "That's right. Someone from the Supreme Heavenly Palace should have this kind of courage." "Your Honor." "What do you mean, what? It can't be." At this moment, apart from Jiang Chun, Lin Hao, and Mu Zhu, everyone else in the hall was stunned. They knew what kind of place the Supreme Heavenly Palace was. It was rumored that it was a place to nurture supreme martial artists. Those who came out of the Supreme Heavenly Palace were all supreme martial artists. Any one of them could dominate an area and be the only supreme one. Now, the meaning of the man's words was very obvious. He admitted it. The Supreme Heavenly Palace came to the Heavenly Palace this time to recruit Jiang Chun. "Jiang Chun, are you willing to join the Supreme Heavenly Palace?" At this moment, the man's expression was very solemn. After all, the Supreme Heavenly Palace's recruitment was a very sacred matter. However, Jiang Chun did not know about the Supreme Heavenly Palace at all. At this moment, he tilted his head and asked, "What benefits can there be if I enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace?" At this moment, the man was somewhat stunned. One must know that many people wanted to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace, but did not even see the main door. Now, he personally invited Jiang Chun, but the other party asked such a question. "Jiang Chun, the Supreme Heavenly Palace is the top legacy above the Heavenly Palace. Even the evil races you know can't compete with the Supreme Heavenly Palace. Hurry up and agree. This is something that many people dream of." A few elders panicked and hurriedly spoke. Regarding this, Jiang Chun frowned and asked, "What does the Supreme Heavenly Palace see in me?" "This is the Palace Master's intention," the man said softly. "But I also see you in high regard now. Let's talk about the benefits first." "If there are no benefits, I won't go," Jiang Chun said directly. "What benefits do you want?" the man asked with a smile, feeling that Jiang Chun was quite interesting. "I want everything the Supreme Heavenly Palace has." Jiang Chun narrowed his eyes. It could also be considered as testing whether the Supreme Heavenly Palace really valued him or not. If it was ordinary, Jiang Chun really did not want to go. Chapter 12:14. Although Jiang Chun didn't know what kind of place the Supreme Heavenly Palace was, he could tell from the attitude of these elders that the Supreme Heavenly Palace was very strong. But so, what if they were strong? If they couldn't give him enough benefits, Jiang Chun couldn't be bothered to enter the Supreme Heavenly Palace. As long as you are strong enough, the Supreme Heavenly Palace can give you whatever you want. The man's expression turned serious as he asked, "Then, do you think you are strong? What do you think?" Jiang Chun raised his eyebrows. With his current battle strength, even the older generation would be wary of him, let alone those of the same generation. Especially after achieving the supreme divine King Dao fruit, coupled with the integration of Tianxing's physical body, his battle strength had become even more terrifying. Now this man actually asked him if he was strong? How are you blind? The boundless world is so big that it's not something you can imagine. Right now, your so-called strength is just your own opinion. Compared to those geniuses who have not appeared since ancient times and are rarely seen in 1,000 years, you're actually nothing. The man said. Jiang Chun was pissed off as soon as he heard that. What did he mean by rarely seen in 1,000 years? What did he mean by nothing? If I say I'm strong, then I'm strong. Jiang Chun stared at the man and asked, "Let's not talk about other things. Suppress your realm to the Emperor God level. See if I don't beat you up." "Oh, why not the Emperor?" the man teased. Jiang Chun was dumbfounded when he heard that. He knew that his battle strength was still a little lacking compared to the emperor's. It was also because of this that he asked the man to suppress his realm to the emperor god level. A true genius, a true monster, a divine king can suppress an emperor, but you are still not able to do so. The man shook his head and looked at Jiang Qin meaningfully. He asked, "Do you know why the Supreme Heavenly Palace values you? Let's not talk about whether we value you or not. At least, I don't believe what you said just now." Jiang Qin said coldly, feeling that the other party was insulting him. A divine king suppressing an emperor? Jiang Qin didn't believe it. It wasn't just Jiang Qin. Everyone present didn't believe it. They all thought that this man was trying to suppress Jiang Qin's arrogance. These two disciples are both martial monarchs, right? How about this? I will suppress my cultivation to divine king and fight with them again. If I win, you will obediently come to the Supreme Heavenly Palace. If I lose, my Supreme Heavenly Palace will give you whatever you want, including the matter in your heart. The man said. As soon as these words came out, Jiang Qin's expression suddenly changed. What Jiang Qin was thinking about, which was the most important thing, was to get his memories back and understand the truth of what had happened in the past. However, he had never told anyone about this. And how did this man from the sovereign heavenly palace know about it? Most importantly, from his tone, the supreme heavenly palace could help him regain all his memories. This made people ponder deeply and puzzled. All right, we will do as you say. I don't believe that a divine king can suppress an emperor, Jiang Qin said in a low voice. Mu Zhu, you will do, the great elder of the inner yard said. However, the man shook his head and said, both emperors can come at me together. I will suppress my cultivation to divine king and can fight against both of you. This, Supreme Lord, this isn't appropriate, right? What if, Supreme Lord, the difference in cultivation is too great? You can fight against both of us. Everyone tried to persuade him. The power of an emperor could easily destroy the world. They were worried that something would happen to this man. Regarding this, the man was very calm. He glanced at Jiang Qin and said softly, let me teach you a lesson. I will let you see how big this world is. Senior, please enlighten me. Then we won't stand on ceremony. Then, Lin Hao and Mu Zhu cupped their hands and bowed to the man. Then, they walked out of the Elder's Hall to fight outside. After all, the Elder's Hall was too small. They were worried that they would destroy the Elder's Hall. Let's do it here. You can go all out. I think I can suppress both of you within 3 moves. The man waved his hand, indicating that there was no need to change emperors. Lin Hao and Mu Zhu were stunned when they heard this. The two of them looked at each other and saw a trace of anger in each other's eyes. They became emperors at a young age and were proud and arrogant. Now that the man said this, wasn't he humiliating them? A divine king fighting against both of them and suppressing them within 3 moves? Senior, be careful. In the next moment, Mu Zhu and Lin Hao attacked. The divine power in their bodies surged, and the great path order turned into chains. They were like colorful clouds and pressed down on the man. First move, go. At this moment, the man shouted and pushed his hands out. There was no sign of the great path order. It was just the purest divine power. Boom! After 2 explosions, the crowd was shocked to find that the power of the pure divine power was not inferior to the Great Path Order. After the 2 explosions, the Great Path Order that Mu Zhu and Lin Hao used was shattered. The 2 of them were forced back a few steps. Second move, go again. Before the 2 of them could react, the man struck out 2 more palms. They were like mountains and hit the 2 of them. However, Lin Hao and Mu Zhu were emperors. At this moment, they were protected by the Great Path Order and used their divine powers. They were like gods of war, burning with divine light. Third move, go. However, in the blink of an eye, the man struck out 2 more palms. These 2 palms were ordinary, but they were filled with pure divine power. Lin Hao and Mu Zhu had just neutralized the second move. Before they could react, they were pressed to the ground by the third move. At this moment, the entire place was silent. Even Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. He was so shocked that he couldn't calm down at all. He stared blankly at Lin Hao and Mu Zhu, who were pressed to the ground, and began to doubt his own strength. The man waved his hand and helped Mu Zhu and Lin Hao up. Then, he looked at Jiang Chen with a smile. What I said is true. Real geniuses can suppress emperors as divine kings. Do you believe me now? Jiang Chen came back to his senses and stared at the man. He did not speak for more than 10 breaths. After more than 10 breaths, he asked, "Are all the people from Supreme Heavenly Palace this strong?" "They're all like this. Some are even stronger than me," the man said. As soon as he said that, Jiang Chen's expression changed. Then, while everyone was dumbfounded, he rushed to the man's side and hugged his arm. "Thai, please hug me." Everyone was speechless. Previously, he looked like he did not want to join Supreme Heavenly Palace. Now, he was trying to hug their thigh. Even the man laughed bitterly and said, "Perhaps what my Supreme Heavenly Palace values is your shamelessness. In front of strength, what's the use of shame? When I am strong enough, all my shameless actions back then will be a form of cultivation," Jiang Chen said without blushing or panting. Chapter 12:15. Everyone was dumbfounded. It was the first time they had heard someone describe shameless in such a refreshing way. However, Jiang Chen did not care at all. To him, as long as he had the strength, everything could be beautified. "This time, I called the three of you here because I plan to let you participate in the Starfield Academy battle." After a few breaths, the man said, "This is an important matter. If you can win, Sky-Piercing Garden will have the right to enter the Great Thousand Mine Burial Ground." "Starfield Academy battle? Are we strong enough?" Mu Zhu asked, seemingly a little worried. As soon as these words came out, Jiang Chen was immediately dumbfounded. He roughly knew Mu Zhu and Lin Hao's strength. They had become emperors at a young age, so logically speaking, they should be full of confidence, but now, they were actually worried about their own strength. Could it be that there was someone stronger than the young emperor in the Starfield Academy battle? This time is different from before. I don't know what's going on in the Great Thousand world, but many hidden geniuses have appeared, especially in this year's Starfield Academy battle. As far as I know, several academies have sent out their disciples, the man said in a deep voice. He looked at Mu Zhu and Lin Hao and smiled bitterly. "The two of you. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for you to win." "Then, what's the use of us participating in the battle? There's no hope at all." Lin Hao sighed. Lin Hao and Mu Zhu had some understanding of the Starfield Academy battle. It was a battle between the disciples of the major academies in the entire Great Thousand world. Only disciples who had entered the academy were eligible to participate. As for the disciples of those sects, great sects and families, they were not eligible to participate. Because of this battle was not only to compete for the opportunity to enter the Great Thousand Mine Burial Ground, but also to compete for the strength and face of the major academies. Although Sky-Piercing Garden dominated the Eastern Starfield and was the top academy in the Eastern Starfield, it was not the strongest in the entire Great Thousand world. The Great Sea Academy in the north, the Rising Sun Academy in the south, and the Great U Academy in the west were all above Sky-Piercing Garden. In addition to these three academies, there were many other academies that were not weaker than Sky-Piercing Garden. Moreover, for some unknown reason, many academies called out their disciples who were still in seclusion to participate in the Starfield Academy battle. This was a rare thing. One had to know that disciples with strong foundations were generally in retreat in order to break through to the transcendent realm. Such a person's status in the academy was not inferior to the elders, or even the headmaster. If he wanted to invite them, it would have to be something major. "I think something must have happened in the Kiliakosm quarry," the man said in a deep voice. "Rumor has it that a supreme treasure was born in the Great Thousand Graveyard. It's called the Elixir of Immortality. It can extend one's life. Without the need for reincarnation, one can live a second or even a third life." "Elixir of Immortality?" Does that kind of legendary thing really exist? Mu Zhu exclaimed. Although the great thousand world was vast, there were only a few immortal herbs. In fact, most people would never even see the elixir of immortality in their entire lives. And that kind of medicine was absolutely priceless. This was especially true for some elderly superhumans. Not only would it allow them to recover to their peak state, but it would also allow them to transform and live a second life. And as long as they lived long enough, they would have the opportunity to break through to a higher realm. Therefore, for those superhumans, the elixir of immortality was absolutely precious. The immortal dragon elixir has always been controlled by the dragon clan. The immortal vermilion bird elixir is controlled by the phoenix clan, and the immortal black tortoise elixir is controlled by the evil clan. Other than these three elixirs of immortality, there has never been a fourth elixir of immortality in this world, the man said. Speaking of this, he frowned, touched his chin, and muttered, Dragon, vermilion bird, and black tortoise are all formed by the four cardinal directions. Now, if there's another elixir of immortality, it would be a tiger? Azure dragon, black tortoise, vermilion bird, white tiger. Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes, and his heart itched. He had also heard of the elixir of immortality, but he had never seen it. Moreover, for such a supreme treasure, even if Jiang Chen encountered it, it would be difficult for him to obtain it. However, it seemed to be different now. If he could enter the Great Thousand Graveyard, he would have a chance to obtain the elixir of immortality. Of course, these were all rumors and guesses. Whether the elixir of immortality had been born in the Great Thousand Graveyard was still uncertain. However, one thing was for sure. Something big must have happened in the Great Thousand Graveyard. Otherwise, those disciples would not have appeared one after another. Your Honor, if the two of us participate in the Starfield Academy competition, we obviously have no hope of winning. Then, this time, the Starfield Academy competition, we have no chance? Lin Hao sighed. You just need to help him clear the obstacles. This time, whether or not Tong Tian Garden can win the Starfield Academy competition depends on him. The man looked at Jiang Chen with a hint of anticipation in his eyes. Jiang Chen heard this and was immediately flustered. He could not calm down. Are you kidding me? There are so many geniuses out there, and you're pinning your hopes on me, a little divine king? With your combat strength, you are indeed invincible below the Emperor level. However, this time, the highest combat strength participating in the Starfield Academy competition is at the half-step transcendent realm. The man explained. As for you, you just need to persevere until the finals. At that time, no matter how high the opponent's cultivation level is, he will not dare to bully you in front of everyone. His cultivation level will more or less be suppressed. At that time, you will defeat him with lightning speed. Then, Tong Tian Garden will be able to win the competition. However, the prerequisite is that, before the finals, you can't make a move and expose your combat strength. Otherwise, hearing this, Jiang Chen understood. This man wanted him to be humble before the finals. We'll pave the way for him, but what if we can't make it to the finals? At that time, we'll have to let him do it himself. Mu Zhu smiled bitterly. It's not that we don't believe in his strength, but that's all we can do. We'll do our best and leave the rest to fate. The man sighed. At that moment, Jiang Chen did not mind. After all, this man did not want him to win the competition. This made him feel much more relaxed. When the time came, all he had to do was try his best. However, Jiang Chen was puzzled. The other academies had their own disciples, but why didn't Tong Tian Garden have any? What about Tong Tian Garden's disciples? Jiang Chen could not help but ask. Well, they're still cultivating in the Aeon Tower, the Grand Elder said. The Aeon Tower is extraordinary. Cultivating in there is equivalent to sleeping or in a state of suspended animation. External forces cannot wake them up at all. If they are forcefully awakened, they may suffer a calamity. Their minds will be unstable and their foundation will be destroyed. As he spoke, the Grand Elder looked at Mu Zhu and Lin Hao with a strange expression. He muttered, This time, when the Aeon Tower opened, I thought that there would be a few disciples with strong foundations. I didn't expect two brats who just entered the Emperor level. Chapter 12:16. Tongtian Garden's Aeon Tower was extraordinary. It was a world of its own. Heaven and earth were reversed, and the sun and moon were talismans. One thought, one reincarnation, one dream, one life. The people who cultivated inside were all in a state of suspended animation and could not be awakened easily. As for Skyspan Court, the true core disciples were all cultivating in the Aeon Tower. However, what they did not expect this time was that after the Aeon Tower opened, none of the disciples who came out were disciples of the foundation level. First Elder, both of our cultivation bases should be considered as the best among our generation, right? Are you saying that you want to spar with us? Muju asked with a strange look on his face. One had to know that among the group of elders in Tongtian Garden, the highest cultivation was at the Emperor level. Although Muju was a disciple, in terms of cultivation, he was not weaker than any of the elders. Now, if the Grand Elder said that, it would be asking for a beating. Cough, cough. How impudent. I'm an elder. The Grand Elder was very embarrassed. He was old, and his blood chi was not vigorous. His strength was no longer at its peak. If he really fought with Muju, he probably would not be able to defeat him. All right, this matter is settled. You guys go and prepare. We will set off tomorrow. The man waved his hand and then looked at Jiang Chun. You stay. I have something to say to you. I'll take my leave. Then everyone left. The elders also took their leave. Only Jiang Chun and the man were left in the elders' hall. Boss, what's the matter? Jiang Chun asked. I want to ask about your previous lives. The man narrowed his eyes. Without waiting for Jiang Chun to speak, he said softly, My name is Hong Yun. And? Jiang Chun blinked with a dumbfounded expression. What does your name have to do with me? I only know that you're a Thai. I just have to hug you. However, seeing Jiang Chun's dumbfounded expression, Hong Yun couldn't help but look lonely. He sighed and said, You didn't come back in the end. You mean? I should know your name? Jiang Chun was stunned. He sized Hong Yun up and asked tentatively, Which life did you know me in? How would I know which life you were in? Hong Yun rolled his eyes. Jiang Chun had reincarnated too many times. Probably not many people in this world could figure out how many times Jiang Chun had reincarnated. Back then, when Hong Yun met Jiang Chun, it was already several tens of thousands of years ago. At that time, Jiang Chun seemed to remember the past. But this time, when they met again, he couldn't remember anything. The Supreme Heavenly Palace has a way to help you regain your past memories. Those are the foundations and methods you left behind in the past. Hong Yun said with a solemn expression. But back then, you said that you would not let my Supreme Heavenly Palace help you recover your memories unless it was absolutely necessary. It seems that in that life, you knew that you would lose your memories in the future. Hearing this, Jiang Chen's expression changed slightly, and his heart was in turmoil. He didn't quite understand the relationship between his past life and the Supreme Heavenly Palace. What kind of trump card did he leave behind for him? Looking at your current situation, it doesn't seem like it's absolutely necessary. Hong Yun muttered. You're full of energy and aren't in any danger. Do I have to wait until I'm about to die before the Supreme Heavenly Palace can help me? Jiang Chun said angrily. Hong Yun nodded and said, That's what you told me in the past. F***CK. What did I want to do in that life? Jiang Chen's face darkened. Then, he asked doubtfully, You kept me here just to tell me this? I want to tell you that although the great thousand world is big, the forces are complicated, and the experts are as numerous as clouds, you don't have to be too afraid. Hong Yun said, The Supreme Heavenly Palace can't give you this world, but if the Supreme Heavenly Palace says it won't give you your life, then no one can take it away. Oh, so powerful? Jiang Chun looked askance. He naturally didn't believe it. The great thousand world was so vast. Where did the Supreme Heavenly Palace get the courage to say such words? No matter how strong the Supreme Heavenly Palace was, they weren't invincible in the great thousand world, right? However, looking at Hong Yun's expression, It didn't seem like he was lying. "All right, I'll believe you for now," Jiangchen muttered. "Then tell me, what was my name in that life when you knew me?" "Tian Xing," Hong Yin said. As soon as he said this, Jiangchen suddenly understood something. Heavenly Garden was an academy under the Supreme Heavenly Palace, and the people of the Supreme Heavenly Palace knew him in that life when he was Tian Xing. This could also explain why Tian Xing's physical body was placed in the training hall of Heavenly Garden. However, what Jiangchen couldn't understand was that such an important thing was not properly placed in the Supreme Heavenly Palace, but left in Heavenly Garden. If it were to be destroyed, the loss would be huge. That's right. Have you heard of a place above the heavens? Jiang Chun pointed to the top of his head and frowned. I merged with Tian Xing's physical body, and now I have some incomplete memories. Above the heavens? Hong Yun's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly covered Jiang Chen's mouth. Don't say these words everywhere. It's a taboo. It's fine for us to talk about it, but your identity is different. Many people in this world are watching you. Hong Yun said in a deep voice. I can't even talk about it? Jiang Chen was shocked. What kind of place was that? Was it in the Great Thousand World, or was it in another big world? The universe was vast and boundless. The places that cultivators could explore now were limited to the Great Thousand World. There had been people who explored the depths of the starry sky, but what they saw was darkness without a trace of light. Therefore, many people thought that the Great Thousand World was the entire world. Other than that, there wouldn't be any other world. But now, Jiang Chun felt that he still knew too little. There's always someone better than you. This is not just a saying, Hong Yun said meaningfully. Then, he walked out of the Elder's Hall and pointed into the distance. Do you know what's in the deepest part of the starry sky? I've heard of it. It's darkness. Jiang Chun followed him out and narrowed his eyes. Is that the end of the world? Without darkness, there's no light. The end of the darkness is the beginning of the light. Hong Yun said, however, in this world, I'm afraid that no one can cross that darkness. Therefore, no one knows what's behind the darkness. At this point, a hint of fear flashed through his eyes. He said, in the darkness, there are damaged palaces, shattered worlds, and eternal corpses. That place is like a prehistoric battlefield, and unknown secrets are buried there. Perhaps you know, Hong Yun said. However, Jiang Chun had forgotten the memories of his previous lives. What could he know? However, when Jiang Chun heard this, something seemed to have occurred to him. It was as if a chain had broken. Chapter 12:17. There seemed to be a rumbling sound in his mind. It was as if the world was being split apart. A cloud of mist was being split apart by a beam of light. At this moment, Jiang Chun was in a daze. An image appeared before his eyes. It was a dazzling star field. It was vast and boundless and connected to the heavens. There was an ancient tree standing in the starry sky. Stars flickered on every leaf. Those were worlds. At the top of the ancient tree, there was a path filled with holy light. It extended all the way to the starry sky, the so-called heavens. On the tree trunk, there were living beings walking and climbing, walking towards the path filled with holy light. Along the way, there were all kinds of living beings coming out of their own worlds and slowly advancing. That path seemed to lead to a higher level of world. All living beings wanted to step into it. However, the image suddenly changed. A living being walked down from the path of holy light. His entire body was shrouded in fog. As he appeared, the entire ancient tree began to tremble. Then, the living being swept his sword across and cut the entire ancient tree into two. At that moment, countless living beings rushed out from the worlds and the leaves of the ancient tree. Angry roars and roars could be heard as they charged at the man shrouded in fog. This battle was very intense. However, even when the ancient tree completely collapsed and those worlds were all destroyed, the living being shrouded in fog did not die. He glanced at the corpses all over the ground. He also swept his gaze across the worlds that had turned into ruins and the broken tree trunks. Finally, he turned into fog and disappeared. As time passed, that place turned into a dead silence. The wreckage of stars was everywhere. There were also the corpses of supreme experts lying in the cold, starry sky. The once dazzling world turned into a vast and boundless dark zone in the end. After an unknown period of time, a beam of light rose from the depths of the darkness. Then, a man stepped out of the darkness. His appearance was blurry and could not be seen clearly. However, the light of the great Tao flickered around his body, as if he was above this world. Sigh. In the end, Jiangchen only heard a long sigh. Then, the man crossed the dark zone and arrived at the upper-class world. The image ended there, and everything disappeared. Jiang Chun stood rooted to the ground, not knowing what to say. Was the creature shrouded in mist the man who had crossed the dark, starry sky? Or could it be that they were two different creatures? If they were not the same person, then where did the creature shrouded in the fog come from? From above the heavens? What about that man? Where did they come from? From another world? Not above the heavens? Jiang Chun was very puzzled. Why would such a scene appear in his mind? Could it be that he had once witnessed everything? At the end of the world, in the dark, starry sky, a long time ago, there was an ancient tree. There was a great heaven and earth there, with many worlds, Jiang Chun said softly. Unfortunately, they all disappeared in the end, destroyed. You really know? What else do you know? Han Yun hurriedly asked. It should be noted that there were too many legends about the dark zone at the end of the world. There were even extraordinaires who wanted to pass through the dark zone. However, from ancient times until now, no one had been able to do it. Some people walked halfway and returned, only to see the endless darkness and the remains of stars, as well as the corpses of various creatures. They did not know anything else. There were also people who did not turn back and had not returned to this day. Perhaps they had really crossed the dark zone and entered a new world. Or perhaps they had died there. Of course, if that was all, the dark zone would not be remembered by the world. According to legend, on the other side of the dark zone, there is another world. Back then, a creature came from that world and called himself an immortal. Han Yin said, perhaps on the other side of the dark zone is the legendary immortal realm. If the other side of the dark zone is the immortal realm, then on top of the ancient tree at the end of the path filled with holy light. Where is it? Jiang Chun thought to himself. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. My memory is incomplete. I only remember this. It seems that the apocalypse back then was really related to you. Han Yun stared solemnly at Jiang Chun and said in a deep voice, in this world, there are some things that you can do without scruples, but there are also some things that you must be wary of. What things? Jiang Chun asked curiously. The hunters of reincarnation and the power behind them. Han Yun said, some people call the power behind the hunters of reincarnation the palace of reincarnation, while others call them the hunters. There are also some who say that they are the true legacy of the ancient underworld. This has so much to do with it. Jiang Chun was shocked. If the hunters of reincarnation were related to the ancient underworld, then this matter, suddenly, Jiang Chun's expression changed greatly. He thought of a person, and that was Mu Yud, who had not appeared for a long time. That guy was definitely related to the ancient underworld. If Mu Yud was really a member of the ancient underworld, then wouldn't Jiang Chun be in danger? Mu Yud, that damn Taoist priest, often took away the bodies of my previous incarnations. Could it be that he already knew everything about me? Jiang Chun's heart chilled. If it was as he guessed, then what was Mu Yud planning? Back then, Mu Yud's strength was enough to kill Jiang Chun. But he didn't do that. Could it be that Mu Yud was planning something far more important than killing Jiang Chun? I hope I'm overthinking it. Jiang Chun sighed. He didn't want to become enemies with Mu Yud. Although Mu Yud was a cunning person, the two of them had a deep relationship. It was not an exaggeration to call him brother. There have always been stowaways in the world, and you are the most famous one, Han Yun said with a strange expression. If you encounter the hunters of reincarnation, remember one thing. You must run. Even if you can defeat them, you must run. Why? If I can defeat them, why should I run? Jiang Chen asked. Once you fight with the Hunters of Reincarnation, your aura will be locked on. By then, there will be no place for you in this world. Han Yun said in a low voice. Even the Supreme Heavenly Palace might not be able to protect you. Are the Hunters of Reincarnation really that terrifying? Jiang Chen was in disbelief. After all, he had met the Hunters of Reincarnation before. At that time, Jiang Chen didn't feel that the Hunters of Reincarnation were very strong. But Jiang Chen knew that Han Yun, as an extraordinary, had no reason to lie to him. I understand. If I encounter them in the future, I will run immediately. Jiang Chen nodded. Then that's all. You should get ready. The Battle of the Star Domain Academy is about to begin, Han Yun said softly. Jiang Chen nodded and was about to leave the Elder's Hall. But before he could take a few steps, a loud sound rang in his mind again. Chapter 12:18. Jiang Chen's figure immediately froze. He clutched his head with both hands, feeling like it was about to explode. Hong Yun's expression froze. He mistakenly thought that something had gone wrong with Jiang Chen's cultivation and hurriedly rushed over. Boom! However, just as he approached Jiang Chen's side, a terrifying wave of energy erupted from Jiang Chen's body, pushing him back. Huh? What kind of power is this? Han Yun was alarmed. He was an extraordinaire, one of the strongest combat powers in the world. Even if a living being of the same level attacked, it would be difficult to push him back so easily. What's wrong with you? Hong Yun's expression was solemn as he stared at Jiang Chen. His pupils suddenly constricted. At this moment, Jiang Chen put down the hand that was covering his head and slowly opened his eyes. There was a trace of a smile on his lips. It was unruly and insolent. You? Hong Yun's eyes widened. This smile, this expression, this posture, to him, was too familiar. Long time no see, little Yun, Jiang Chen said with a smile. He walked forward and stroked Hong Yun's head affectionately, as if he was an elder. If this scene was seen by others, their jaws would definitely drop. A boy with the cultivation of a divine king called Hong Yun, an extraordinaire, little Yun, and even dared to touch his head? This, however, Hong Yun's face was filled with excitement. He looked at Jiang Chen in a daze and whispered, Master, you're back. Not really back. I'm just temporarily awake. Jiang Chen smiled. No, the current Jiang Chen, to be precise, should be called Heavenly Star. Perhaps Jiang Chen himself did not expect that after losing the memories of his previous lives, Heavenly Star's memories would suddenly awaken. Master, the memories of your previous lives. Do you need us to help you retrieve them? Han Yun asked. When Jiang Chen heard this, he smiled and shook his head. Then he turned around and looked up at the space outside the hall. After a few breaths of time, he sighed and said, It's not time yet. The heavens haven't changed, and the people haven't appeared yet. The world is still peaceful. Master, I have a question. Han Yun frowned and slowly asked. Many people say that you won't be able to come back. The path is cut off. You are isolated in another world, in a fog. This matter, maybe I really won't be able to come back. Jiang Chen whispered. His expression was calm, and there was no sign of panic. That's right. Jiang Chen was indeed trapped in his first life. That was a place that was difficult for ordinary people to imagine. Time and space were reversed, and the primal chaos was like a tide. Even if it was Jiang Chen's first life, it would probably be difficult for him to return. Therefore, he had a backup plan. He knew that if he was unable to return, then someone had to replace him. And this person was the Jiang Chen of this life. He severed all of his past memories, just so that the Jiang Chen of this life could be a person of this life. Not moved by other things, not annoyed by the previous lives, not entangled with this world. However, after the current Heaven Star woke up, he also understood Jiang Chen's meaning. He knew that he was overthinking. After all, Jiang Chen was him, and also his first life. In the end, it was the same person. The soul was the same, and the physical body was reborn. Even if the memories were no longer there, it was ultimately the same. Back then, the obsession of the first life was secretly affecting Jiang Chun. Little Yun, you don't have to worry. Maybe I can still come back. Jiang Chun said with a smile. After all, in this world, there aren't many places that can trap me, unless I don't want to come back. Master, you don't want to come back? Han Yun was stunned, completely not understanding what Jiang Chun meant. I'll do my best and leave the rest to fate. Jiang Chun said softly, then patted Hong Yun's shoulder again and said, leaving. The next time we meet, maybe it's the return of memories or the return of the first life, or even Jiang Chun is Jiang Chun. The moment his voice faded, Heaven Star's consciousness disappeared. Jiang Chen's consciousness recovered. At this moment, Jiang Chen had a feeling like he was suddenly enlightened like a dream. He looked at the slightly red-eyed and agitated Han Yun in front of him and asked in puzzlement, "What's wrong with you?" "I'm fine. Just thought of some past things and was a little emotional. That's all." Han Yun calmed down very quickly and waved his hand and said, "You go and prepare." Amen. Jiang Chen nodded his head, but he was very puzzled in his heart. What happened just now? Why did he suddenly lose consciousness? But he did not think too much either and left the Elder's Hall very quickly. And after Jiang Chen left, Hong Yun's expression became very solemn. He stood in place and mused for a long time. Finally, he let out a long sigh and said, "Master, is your first life unable to come back, or you don't want to come back, at the same time, in a small world?" This place was shrouded in clouds and mist, with ancient trees, mountains, and forests. The entire small world was filled with the aura of great Tao. In the center of this small world, in the place surrounded by mountains, there was a simple and ancient palace. There was no plaque in the palace, and there were no living creatures around. There was only a white-haired old man standing at the entrance of the palace. At this moment, he narrowed his eyes, and his gaze seemed to be able to penetrate space and time. "Heaven Star, you're back?" The old man said softly, then shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "Left again? You came back then, but you left again. What kind of surprises did you bring to this world, and how many accidents were buried?" After a few breaths, another old man walked out of the palace and stood side by side with the previous old man. He sighed softly and said, "The world is still peaceful. He probably doesn't want to come back now. After all, there's nothing to do if he comes back." This is like his personality. He likes to be a hands-off shopkeeper, another old man said with a bitter smile. The scene changed and returned to Tongtian Garden. At this moment, Jiang Chun found Jiang Zixio, Prince, and the others and asked about Nayland Mayer. "Your disciple is doing well in the evil race." "Don't worry," Prince said. "Don't misunderstand. The evil race is not using her to threaten you. You also know that the great wide world is very concerned about you people from the Six Realms. If you leave her alone, you will end up very miserably," Jiang Zixio said. Jiang Chen also sighed when he heard this. He was somewhat resentful in his heart. The great wide world treated the living beings of the Six Realms as goods and raised them like livestock. They did not leave the slightest trace of dignity for the living beings of the Six Realms. Sometimes, this feeling was worse than death. "One day, I will rectify the name of the Six Realms," Jiang Chen said in a deep voice. "By the way, I heard some news about someone. Maybe you'll be interested." Prince said, "It's a fat Taoist who claims to be from the ancient underworld. He is now showing off everywhere in the Western Star region. For the time being, no one dares to provoke him. And he has been asking about your whereabouts." "Fat Taoist? Claims to be from the ancient underworld? Could it be?" Jiang Chen's expression froze. There was no need to think about it. That guy was definitely Mu Yud. Back then, Mu Yud disappeared after entering that door. After today, he finally appeared again. You're tuning into the Warrior Lord YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.